accordance with Executive Order AB 361, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors meetings are being held virtually, and you can participate via the Zoom call-in phone number, which is located on your screen and on the front of the agenda. And Nikki, may we please have roll call? Or Tracy? Nikki?
Nope, me. Okay, Supervisor Bass?
Here.
Supervisor Bohn?
Tracy, Nick, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Supervisor Bushnell?
Morning.
Supervisor Wilson?
Counted for.
Good. And Supervisor Madrone?
Present.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So now we'll go on to the flag salute. And if you can bring up the flag. And everyone, please follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for those of you who are in attendance today, just a reminder that if you have an item you want to speak on, when we go to that item, press *9 to raise your hand. When it's your turn to speak, you press *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes today. And when you have 30 seconds left, you'll hear this sound. And a reminder that there's 30 seconds left, and after that, you will be muted. Don't take it personally, it's the same for everyone. So at this time, I'd like to ask Yayo Hayes if there's any modifications to the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Bass. There is one modification at the request of Supervisor Bushnell. Item K2 regarding payroll, will be pulled, and it will return next week when the Auditor Controller is available to be present.
All right, thank you. And so that's a reminder, if anyone wishes to comment on that item today, it is no longer considered on the agenda, so the appropriate time to comment would be during general public comment on non-agenda items. We will move now on to our consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I will make the motion.
Is there a second?
I will make the second.
All right, sounds good. Motion and a second. Any comments before we go to public comment? Okay, doesn't look like any. So we have first public commenter at 0116. And I believe that is.
Okay, can you hear me?
Welcome, yes, Ash. You got 3 minutes.
HumboldtFC.com. I'm speaking on item 18 in the consent calendar, provision of staffing services designed to address the reduce the spread of COVID-19 COVID budget. I read the attached professional services agreement document. It contains abundant language that is both frightening in concept and repugnant to our individual freedoms. DHS investigates cases of COVID-19 and their close contacts to ensure safe and effective isolation and/or quarantine. This sounds like the COVID Gestapo. The county desires to retain qualified professional organization to provide certain staffing services that are designed to assist DHHS public health's COVID-19 case investigation and contact tracing program to effectively identify, isolate, and quarantine. Who in the county desires this? Is this DHSS? Or is this the board members desire this? Whereas a contractor desires to provide the county with certain staffing services that are designed to assist DHHS, Public Health's COVID-19 CICT program with preventing the spread of COVID-19. Which contractor? I mean, who's being brought in to police the people in our state of non-emergency here? Whereas the activities covered by this agreement are public health surveillance activities undertaken to address and reduce the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. What surveillance activities are we talking about? Health spies peeking in our windows? I would like to think that the relationship between those calling in and the board has evolved, that we might have a little bit of credibility. So you listen to how we read this and listen to us say, no, 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 and no, this is not a good idea. This will lead to bad things, like what we see in Australia with the internment camps. No amount of COVID funding is worth this. please unanimously reject this item. I mean, I don't know whose idea this is, where this came from, and did this come up during the week off since last meeting? I'm just flabbergasted reading through this stuff. This is just unspeakable. Please, please do not do this. I would expect a 5 out of 5 rejection. If you guys have, if you just took the time to read this, it's ridiculous. Please vote no on this, because this is it's just stupid. It's an insult to everyone in the community to pass something like this. And you just put it in the consent calendar like it's just already agreed upon. It's not a big issue. This is huge. Why put it in the consent calendar? This is horrible. Do not do this. Thank you.
Yes, please pull this from the consent and talk about it. I mean, this is not a small thing, like hiring a task force to come in and police people over COVID. That is horrible.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Ash. All right, so we'll go to 5300. And Adam, I think that's you, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, this is Adam Lustig, Lost Coast Populist, calling in from District 4. Also about item 18. I just don't see the logic in putting more money after bad. Public health has been consistently wrong about COVID for the past 2 years, and now we see in the mainstream news and from the CDC all the things that they've been wrong about. You know, they'll say the science has changed. Coincidentally, it's changed to what those of us on Team Reality have been saying now for 2 years. And you've seen all the emails that you've been sent, and you've heard all of us talk about these things, you know, like now they say, oh, natural immunity was actually more effective against Delta than the injection. Or the PCR test can give false positives for 12 weeks after infection. And that the cycle threshold, the NBA set it at level 30 so that they could get their players back. So the NBA understands it. And of course, you know, we've been saying it for 2 years based on what the inventor, Kerry Mullis of the test said. And it turns out that that was correct. And, you know, we've been saying for 2 years that these cloth masks don't do anything. And now they're finally admitting that. You know, we knew once they admitted that this was an aerosolized virus, it's just basic science. But for some reason, people still struggle with that. And your mask mandate just encourages this, you know, this poor science approach. Vaccines don't slow the spread. They've admitted that now they don't affect transmission. So, I mean, there's no logical reason for a vaccine mandate, you know, unless you're a vaccine company or someone invested in one. The state of New Hampshire now is putting forward a bill to make ivermectin available widely because it works, like, you know, we've been saying, of course. And asymptomatic spread is a myth. You know, now healthcare workers, if they're asymptomatic, even if they test positive, can come back to work. The NFL is allowing asymptomatic players to play, even if they have, well, you know, let's call it what it is, a false positive. And, you know, now even Dr. Fauci and many others have talked about the whole thing of, you know, from with COVID, you know, where patients, you know, they may test positive, but they're asymptomatic and they're in the hospital for a whole other reason, or they died for a whole other reason. And, you know, now even Director Walensky has said what we've been saying for 2 years, which is, you know, 75% of deaths had 4+ comorbidities. You know, this whole virus, it affects a targeted group of people. It doesn't affect everyone. And these blanket proposals of lockdown, masks, and vax for everybody have failed. And to continue to give more money to public health to pursue these failed policies is illogical. We need to take a much better approach to all of this. So I hope you'll reconsider. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And the last hand we have up is 1041, and I believe that's Donnie, so welcome.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, my name is Donnie Creekmore from the 5th District, HumboldtFC.com. And I would like to, you know, obviously second what Ash and Adam said prior to me. I actually have some family members that are trying to call in. They're having some issue right now, so I might have them just talk on my phone at the end if they can't get in. But it's the phone number is 209-505-1325 if it comes through. Anyways, you know, here we are, and you guys are about to vote for this funding for a non-emergency. I've proven it to you guys. I've sent it to you via email, and I've even had a handful of you guys look at it and agree with my findings that, yeah, sure enough, the cases that the state collects doesn't show the true story, and that there's a lot of cases out there that happen that aren't part of that data set. And that data set is what they derive the hospitalization and death percentages off of, which is what the relative danger is based off of. On your own data, it shows that everybody under 59 years old has less than a 1% chance of death from this virus in the county. So, and that's based off of a small sample size. If we were to add the entire sample set to it, those numbers would drop dramatically. You know, meanwhile, we have a spike of cases among the vaccinated. A complete pandemic of the vaccinated is happening right now, based upon your own collected data. I mean, literally every single element and measure of failure has been realized by the county's Department of Health. And here we are, you guys are gonna like unanimously just vote and just throw it in the consent calendar, give these guys more money and just keep on going with this bullshit program that's not getting us anywhere. I mean, it's causing division in our schools, it's causing division in the populace. You have places that want to allow people in with medical conditions, and it's just insanity. And the fact that you guys are just going to willy-nilly just go on through with it again, just, you know, we'll just kick the can up the road. We're just doing what the state's doing. It's the same thing the school board's saying, is they're just doing what the county's doing. So if you guys want to act like leaders, that would be great. You know, otherwise stop being followers. You're not county followers, you're county supervisors, okay? Supervisors is a leadership position. Do what's right. Vote this ridiculous crap down. It needs to go. It has no place in this county. It's not Humboldtian. It's not American. It's literally insanity. I think that you guys just didn't read it. There's no way you read it. There's just no way you read it. If you guys read this, if you guys read Agenda 9 Item 18 and all the documents in there, I just don't see how you could vote for it. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Donnie. All right, we have more hand up. It's a 0151. Just press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. This is Dottie Russell from Southern Humboldt. I see a lot of different, I see a lot of different programs that are looking at health and human services and trying to do all kinds of things to help our community. This is great. In addition, I see the one on number 20 that is the understanding with the city of Fortuna for assistance with the state of California Housing and Community Development Program Administration. For about 20 years, I've been monitoring and being on the Humboldt Homeless and Housing Coalition, and very few things are additionally awarded to Southern Humboldt. We have a huge population of people at risk of homelessness or homeless. And I'd like to see on the agenda and the consent decree to have lots of programs that will help assist people in staying with their housing. And with what's happening with the COVID and the housing is key situation, it is a complete disaster. And there's all kinds of people that aren't getting approved because mentally they're not able to work with the paperwork and get things done, and they're all going to be evicted. Is there any way that somebody could put together some kind of site, maybe the one in Redway for the county, that could be handling housing as key applications so that people can then get their award, as well as working with RCAA to continue their way of getting some assistance so that they don't all get evicted, because there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people evicted this year if we don't step it up, particularly in Southern Humboldt. I'm happy to be collaborating with you guys and through the Christian Science Church so that we can see this gets taken care of before it's a complete disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. No more hands are up, so we will go back to the board. I'd like to ask Director Beck and perhaps CAO Hayes if they can give a brief description, because the way I read 18, it has nothing to do with internment camps and not Gestapo. To me, it's like just trying to track and let people know that they may have been exposed. But if there could be a little more, not discussion about it, but just I think maybe clarity on from what people are reading and thinking it is.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bass. I would actually defer to Director Beck, who I see is on the meeting today, to provide a brief description of that item.
All right, thank you. Rex, sorry, you're moving your hand.
Yeah, if Director Beck's coming on here, when I read this and I've read it a couple times and I understand as we work through this and everything else, but with the way, obviously it's changing and, kids in school, out of school, schools open, schools closed, all this going on. I'd like to know, where is this money directed? Because I know we still have staff, important staff, out doing tracing. But we're averaging, what, 350 a day right now? I don't know if we have enough people that can trace that many people. And I know we had 878 the other day with only 2 hospitalizations, which is a good number. I'm glad the vulnerable are being very careful and going through the process and stuff. So I'm just trying to figure out where this money actually goes. And I know we're real good about, well, it doesn't affect the general fund, but I mean, government doesn't make money or have money. They take our money and do what they do with it. So maybe these questions are more than, I mean, they deserve an answer.
So are we gonna pull this to have discussion, or?
I don't think we need, Alicia, I don't think we need to pull this. I think we can still have the discussion. But I mean, if we knew it was going to have this much, it's just like if we pull it, we've already had the public comment on it. So I guess my question is if it wants to be bifurcated. So I would go to Director Hayes.
Chair Bass?
I'm thinking it's fine. Yes, I see that.
We have this every time we put COVID on consent, and then we have this discussion, then we have this whole go-between. And I know we put it on consent to make it, but it's a little too, I'd say it's a little too ripe to keep putting on consent, because we end up then deciding, well, should this be on consent or not? And then how much time are we going to take on this? So.
Well, and every supervisor has the opportunity to pull any item off of consent.
Fully understand.
Yeah, so I would just say if that's, if it's not pulled off and you think there's going to be as much discussion, to me, this seems more of a contractual issue. So again, I'm going to go to Director Hayes and say, what is CAO Hayes, sorry, what is the most appropriate way with this being on the consent calendar? I think we can still have the discussion. And Supervisor Wilson, I'll get to you in just a moment. I'm just asking our CAO her thoughts.
It is on consent, so it's not intended for a robust discussion. I see Sophia Pereira was logging on, so maybe she would like to give a brief description, and I would also defer to County Council as to whether or not it's appropriate to continue a discussion on it. It does, because it's on consent, that's not typically the avenue that we would follow.
All right, and if those hands that are, and I will say the hands that are being popped up, we already had gone back to the board. If we decide to proceed differently with this, then I'll consider reopening public comment, but we had already gone back to this board at this point. Supervisor Wilson, I do see our attorney on as well to make.
Yeah, I just want to clarify from my perspective, we've made this is not a policy decision. This is a contract based on policies we've already had discussion about. And if we want to have discussion about the policy, then we should have that as a separate item. But this is just contractual. So that's the way I view it. And that's why I feel it's non-controversial, because we're not talking about the policy. The policy may be controversial, and we could go back and discuss that if someone wants to put it on the agenda from my perspective, but the way I look at this is not a policy decision. It's purely a contract based on policy decisions that's already been made. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Everyone, I'm giving everyone new titles today. So if I call your name and you don't know what title you have, I'm sorry. County Council Billingsley.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's a bit of a strange situation. I think if there's going to be any more than a brief discussion, it should just be pulled off and then reopen the public comment period.
Okay, my question for you would be, there are already people who have commented, so then it would be okay to take public comment from folks who have not already commented on this item?
If they've already commented on the item, I don't think you need to provide them a second chance to comment on the same item.
Okay, but okay, so then it sounds like there's some supervisors that, I kind of agree it's a contractual issue right now. But if the majority, if supervisors Bohn and Bushnell really, or anyone else really wish to have it discussed more, this is the time to say it. And this is highly unregular, but we can certainly then push this down and continue this on items that have been pulled from consent. Rex?
I thought you were the first one that spoke on it, just so.
Yeah, no, I just asked for.
I'm just saying, I'm just said there was 3 supervisors that spoke on it, not just, anyway,
No, but
just FYI.
Yes, actually, Supervisor Bohn, I understand that. I asked for clarity and not a discussion. You asked for more of a discussion and a robust, having it off the consent calendar. So that's what I'm asking.
Sure.
So is anyone, Supervisor Wilson, are you okay if we bring it back? I know that Supervisor Bohn really wants to have this, and he could have pulled it off, but he didn't. But he can next time, but we can go and do it today in the reverse order. Supervisor
I
Wilson?
think any supervisor has the ability to pull something off the consent calendar. I'm not going to pull this off consent calendar because I don't think it's worthy of that. But if Supervisor Bohn wants to do that and say it out loud that he wants to do that, then I think that's fine.
Okay, then we'll reverse it. So Supervisor Bohn, just make your decision.
Geez, I'll say it out loud. I'll spring it from the top. There's been a lot of questions on this, and I'd love to know where we're spending $110,000 a month.
Okay.
I just want a clarification where the money's going. And I understand it's contractual. I understand that, Mike. So we'll never talk about another contract again, is the way I understand that. But I think we should probably answer the questions that were asked. I'm not taking sides. I'm not doing anything else.
So Supervisor Bohn, it's simple. You want to pull the item.
It is really simple.
All right. Well, then say it. Okay. Don't just infer.
Can we just
You're pulling the item. Yes, Supervisor Bushnell?
I'm wondering if Sophia can just give a brief description. I think that's what's being asked.
That's what I was hoping, but if it doesn't go past brief, then we'll revisit this with Supervisor Bohn.
And yeah, for the record, I didn't want it pulled. I just want a clarification. So
thank you. So Sophia, and that being said, we're not supposed to have a whole bunch of conversation with ourselves after we get the clarification. At that point, then we just go and take it to the other direction. Sophia.
Good morning, your board. Just a brief explanation of the PHI team that we are using. So really the focus of public health is population health. Contact tracing has been something we've done for syphilis, tuberculosis, other communicable diseases. In order for us to have enough capacity to focus on COVID support for at-risk populations like within our schools and our unhoused population, we did need to acquire some additional staffing support, which also frees up our team to be able to continue contact tracing for the other communicable diseases we continue to see in our community, such as syphilis. So this is a team of 10 people, including a manager, and they're embedded into our contact investigations team for COVID, working closely with our nurses and being able to provide technical assistance to our schools, and providing that additional support has really helped us to be able to address not only COVID, but also the other communicable diseases we see in our community. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Some more stuff.
I'm here.
Go on mute.
Unmute yourself.
Letters.
John Miller.
Hello. You got him? Okay. Supervisor Bohn, I'll go to you first if you're comfortable with Sophia's, if you have some questions or on the description.
Yeah, I know I understand the other communicable diseases, which we've always been able to handle. So the Public Health Institute how long have they been working with us?
Yeah, so we've been working with them directly since October. The state actually had a separate contract with the Public Health Institute. And so we had been using PHI staff throughout the incident, like other local health jurisdictions across the state, because the state had a direct contract. We got grant funding that was able to support this type of staffing support. And so we entered into a contract directly with PHI once the state ended their own agreement, so that we could continue the resource.
Does that help, Supervisor Bohn?
No, sure, I guess. I just don't know how we track 350 people a day with 10 people, with those 10 people. Because when I had COVID, I got my FedEx letter that I had COVID from the state on my 11th day, my first day out of quarantine. I got a FedEx letter the day I got out of quarantine, and they said, you need to quarantine for 10 days from your point of contact. And it was an $11 FedEx too. So I know we're good at spending money. I just don't know the efficiency of what we're doing. And are we actually being efficient with it? Or are we just throwing money at it? And that's the only clarification I needed on it, because my firsthand, experience with it was not very efficient. So I was told to quarantine after 11 days of, 10 days of quarantine. So, and I may have been an anomaly. I don't know, but it just seems with everything changing so much. And I mean, I'm not trying to jump on a bandwagon or anything else here. There were very good questions being asked, because the rules are changing daily by so many different people. And it's very confusing for everybody. And you tend to lose, some of the substance behind it. So I'm just asking the questions that were being answered.
CAO Hayes.
Hi, thank you, Chair Bass. I would suggest that we either pull the item at this point if additional conversation is going to take place, or move along with the consent agenda, please.
Thank you. It's a pleasure of any supervisor wish to can have a further conversation, because we can certainly pull this and continue it off of the consent calendar. Okay.
I'm sorry, it's just, we're spending a lot of money. And I understand. I've had friends die of COVID. I've been to funerals. I hate this thing and everything else. But I mean, eventually we're going to have to look at these numbers and realize that I think we're getting a handle on it. So, I mean, I know that's going to be shocking to a lot of people, but and I'm not jumping on anything. I'm just saying it's reality in there, and people that are subjected or vulnerable, they need to step up and do everything they can. So I don't know if we need to further discussion. I just don't know how. I don't know if the answer, I mean, I asked where the money was going to be done on COVID, and it sounded like syphilis was going to run rampant if we didn't do this. And I'm sorry, I know there is an issue in our thing, but I mean, that's always, STDs have always been around here. So that was the only thing I'm saying. I wanted a definition on one end of it. So, or an explanation.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. We could also ask for a further update at next week's meeting, if that would be something you'd like. I do see our CAO has her hand up, and I do see Director Beck is on.
I would just propose that we defer to Supervisor Bohn to make a motion as to his will with this item, to pull it from consent or to approve consent.
I would like some further information on what we're actually going to do with the money, the $100,000 a month.
So we're pulling it from consent, so we can take care of consent. We'll bring this one under covered. We'll continue the conversation. So this one is now off the table for conversation. So Anyone else have a comment on the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure thing. Supervisor Bohn,
Yes.
Supervisor Bass,
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell,
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson,
Yep.
and Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Thank you. Consent passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. So we're now on to items pulled from consent. And we've had a partial presentation. We've have some public comments, and those folks won't be commenting again. But at this time, I guess I turn to Director Beck or Sophia, whomever wants to help clarify this for Supervisors Bohn's questions and any others you may have heard come up. Dr. Beck?
Hi, I'm Connie Beck, Health and Human Services Director. I apologize for missing the first part of this conversation. I just think maybe it would be helpful that we have a bigger discussion, not just on this, but on COVID and where we are in contact tracing and other items. I don't know, next week, should we bring the item back for more discussion? It sounds like you want more in-depth discussion about all that's happening around COVID in public health and not just this one item. So I would like some clarification, I guess. We do know that this is changing every day. COVID is changing every day. This is a pandemic, and we are doing the very best that we can in public health. That's what we're doing. So I'd like to bring the item back if you're interested in more information, Supervisor Bohn, or others.
And again, I'm doing this through the chair, without jumping on a bandwagon. Some of the questions were brought up previous did stimulate, hey, what are we doing? We as a body tend to say, yeah, okay, that $1 million here, $1 million there. I mean, pretty soon you got a couple $1 million there. It's just a question to be asked. And I understand it's just a contract, but we discussed contracts before too. I've seen contracts get pulled. So to say just because it's a contractual item that we can't talk about it, then why do we have them on the agenda if we're not going to talk about them? I guess I'm confused. So what I'm trying to say is I'd like to have some of the questions answered, because it is $600,000, I guess, before it's all said and done. And I just want to know where we're at with it and where we're going, and is it being effective in what we're doing? Because I mean, at 300 a day, I mean, with the 800s on the weekends and stuff like that, are we tracing the people in time to trace them, or are we just chasing our tail? And I don't know that. I don't know how many. I mean, I can imagine how many people some of these other big counties have to trace and stuff. So it's just questions to answer. I'm fully in support of it. I think DHHS through this last 2 years has done a great job. I mean, you guys are fighting something that plays by no rules, and the rules change every day. So you have to adjust every day, and all the variants and everything else change every day. I fully understand that, and I support that. And I'm not jumping on anybody's side that commented today. I want them to know that I'm not doing. It just stimulated some questions for me that I'd like some better answers, or more in-depth answers. The answers I got today were wonderful, but I would like to have more in-depth answers of where the money are going, where are the 10 people doing, how many phone calls are they making? We spend a lot of money out there with a lot of different agencies to help offset us, but I'm just, every once in a while you got to ask, could we do better in-house? So, or not,
Before I go to Supervisor Wilson, I wanted to say, I appreciate your clarification. The parts that with some people were talking, I heard words like Gestapo and internment camps, and it was like, that is not what this is. It is about process, and I think you're asking fair questions of how much is it costing, what are we actually doing with it? So that I can support.
Well,
that.
they lost me at Gestapo internment.
Okay. Supervisor Wilson.
Yeah, I think that Supervisor Bohn is correct that we do often discuss contracts directly and pull either they get on our agenda, in the regular agenda, or they get pulled because there are questions specific to the contract and the details of which. And I appreciate that. And I think if we want to have that discussion, that's great. I think the confusing part to the rest of the board is we heard questions that were referencing things way beyond the details of the contract and global national responses, as well as references to internment camps. And I'm sorry, but that was not clarified by Supervisor Bohn as questions that he didn't want to have answered necessarily in this discussion. So now it has been clarified, and I appreciate that. So if we want to have a discussion about the details of this contract, then let's do it now. It seems like, but if we want to have a discussion of our COVID response as in general, then I think Director Beck is correct that it should come back as an item on another agenda.
Supervisor Bohn, then I do have a couple more.
I don't think I inferred at all that I wanted internment and Gestapo to be. I asked questions that I would like answers for, and the questions I asked were the ones I wanted answered. I can't speak for public comment. I just wanted to make clear I'm not coming from public comment. These are things that just stimulated some of the questions I had. And then I thought I'd throw in my own personal tracing and the issues we have and the effectiveness. So that's, I mean, I would like my questions that I asked, and public comment is just that, public comment.
I appreciate, just to clarify, I mean, you did state that there were a lot of good questions asked. And so like, when we don't know what those questions are, then I guess we get confused, and I apologize for being confused about that.
All right, I think you
seriously,
did, I think.
Shit.
Excuse me, Supervisor Bohn, thank you for going on mute there. So we do have a couple other hands up in public. This, if you've talked on this item already, you don't get a second bite. But I do realize if you have your hand up again and you have spoke, and if you have someone else that is planning to speak and not you, just tell me when I answer, when I call your number. So 1325, press *6 to unmute. And welcome.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I wanted to talk about item 18, just the effects that the mandates are having on children. I have a child, actually I have two children that go to Trinidad Elementary, and I'd have to say that the way that things have been talked about at the school, like when the outside mask mandate was lifted, the school, which I know you guys have no control over, chose to not tell any of the students that the mask mandate, or their families, that the mask mandate for outside was lifted. And my children decided that they didn't want, because they wear a mask for hours a day, that they wanted to take their mask off outside.
Nicole,
called. Yeah.
Hold on, Nicole, hold on. And I stopped your time because I just wanted to check with you. This item
no worries.
Isn't about the entire COVID response. It is specifically on this this contract for the contact tracing. And sorry, I'm not, so if you can kind of
no, you're fine.
Yeah, just try to keep it to the contact tracing. And you're talking about schools, maybe that's where your connector is. I just wanted to check. Okay, so I'll start your time again.
Okay, thank you so much. And I apologize for that. I thought it was more of a broader conversation. I hopped on here late today. So the contact tracing, I think going along with Mr. Bohn, I know two other people that received letters that were, I would say probably within like 8 to 15 days past when they got COVID. Also, I think that the guidance for schools when it comes to like what they're calling contact tracing, where if a child gets sick, I have one child that was in close contact with a friend that has COVID. I'm not really into having him, he's nervous to take a test. So he's staying home for 10 days which I thought that the quarantining was 5 days now, so through the CDC, but anyway. But my other child who lives in my home is able to go to school. And so I think that the guidance for, I don't know how that really works out if we're all in the same home together. I don't know if that's a school policy, but the school had told me that that was basically public health telling them how they're supposed to work it. Neither of my children are symptomatic or have COVID. So I think that the contact tracing at this point with how rampant Omicron is, I think that you guys with only 2 hospitalizations, I really think that it's probably being a little overzealous at the time. But I think that, I think that eventually you guys are going to have to taper back what you're doing because everybody's getting it. And I think that the vulnerable people have made good decisions on what they need to do.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. 0116. Alrighty, I believe that's Ash. And so if you have someone else in your house speaking on this item, but you've already spoken on it in the first area. So do you have someone else?
I know. Hello?
Hello, Ash. All right, do you have someone else
Yeah.
when you're speaking?
Yeah, it's not someone else. It's just one short clarification question. If someone could answer it, just if anyone could answer, if there's within this proposed thing, is there the possibility of off-site quarantines where people are forced to quarantine in a space other than their own home? That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I think you had 9 seconds left in your last talk, so cover that, get right in. All right, I don't see any other hands up, so we'll go back. We did have that one question from the public that if someone would like to, I think I know the answer, but good clarification. And then any other, and I'm sorry, 0526, we already went back to the board, so this is where we're staying right now. Supervisor Bohn, did you want to start asking for more clarification than you have, or?
No, I asked the questions about where are these people based at? Is this all done? They're not based here, obviously, so they're remote and things like that. And I don't know anything. I apologize about the Public Health Institute. So I just asked, where, it's $100,000 a month for something I thought we were already doing. And I understand it was because it was getting funded through the state. Now it's getting kicked to us. And I mean, that should be a red flag right there. Every time anything the state decides, hey, you guys can run this better, I can go back to probation, law enforcement, jails, and everything else. And how's that working for us? So I'm just saying, is this going to end up costing us, outside, and I know it's not a general fund item, but it is a money item. And I'm just, is this absolutely necessary? And if you guys say this is absolutely necessary and this is as effective as hell, but I think this is a time we look at the effectiveness we're doing it. I know everybody wants to stay away from this, but I'm just asking the question. And when I said there were some good questions raised today, just a clarification, I didn't say everything they said was great. We should answer them all. But anyway, there were some questions asked that I mean, get us thinking. And I thank them for that. Anybody that speaks on any subject, we're going to have another one coming up here in a minute. So I just, Sophia, if you say we need this more than anything, or Michelle, this is the most important thing we're doing right now on the trace, I'll defer to you guys. You're DHHS. I'm sorry, I ask questions.
Thank
Obviously
you.
not enough, and or too much, depending on who you talk to.
Well, I'd like to know more about the effectiveness of, because you're right, you got yours late. I know someone else who hadn't got theirs after 10 days. So there is that challenge.
And we have county staff. We have high-ranking county staff that we could use in some of our departments because we are short-staffed everywhere, helping with tracing. So I'm hopefully it's just the most effective thing we're doing right now.
Sophia?
Yeah, thank you, your board. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview of who our investigations team, what their time is really dedicated to. So we've moved past we talked about this a few months ago, that we moved past the point of doing individual contact tracing for the broader community and really focusing our efforts on vulnerable populations. So our investigations team focuses on three vulnerable populations. So we have healthcare, making sure that our healthcare system, including our skilled nursing facilities, are able to continue to provide care. We have schools that we're providing support to. And then vulnerable populations really is around congregate care settings like homeless shelters, assisted living facilities. These are populations that do require a lot of outbreak support. And so our investigations team is really, looking at those key three population areas to make sure that we're able to give them the resources that they need. And for example, for vulnerable populations and folks that are unhoused, if there is a shelter that is seeing positives, we do not want that to spread in that homeless shelter or in that assisted living facility. So it is really key that we provide staff to support that. And for our unhoused population, there are times where we've offered a motel room, a place to stay to properly quarantine and isolate so that it doesn't spread into that shelter. So those are some of the things that our investigation staff are working on. And I will just say, when we started this contract and started this work directly with PHI in October, to the point that things have been very fluid and things are always changing. I mean, our staff have definitely needed this support. It was when the state was ending this contract and opened it up to local health jurisdictions to pursue it. It was something that we absolutely needed at the time. It is something that has absolutely given us capacity right now as we've seen the surge of cases, because as we're seeing a surge in our community, we are obviously seeing a surge of cases in healthcare, schools, and vulnerable populations. So right now, this has really been helpful to maintain some continuity. And to give context about our communicable disease program, pre-COVID, we had 2 public health nurses to communicable disease. Our operation has grown much bigger, obviously to scale up to meet the needs of COVID, with temporary staff like PHI. But we also have needed to make sure that we have this type of staffing support like PHI so that we can continue to do contact tracing for tuberculosis, for syphilis, and other communicable diseases, because we have been stretched very thin. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have. And
I have a question, Sophia. Sorry, Michelle, or do you want to go first, Michelle? Okay, I'll ask my question. And then, so I'm glad you clarified, yes, because someone did ask about offsite locations. I think they're hearing other places where they're like mass locating people, perhaps. And my understanding is all we've had is, when like the shelter situation you mentioned, we have been able to move people into their own rooms where they're able to be isolated. So can you clarify if I'm correct or not?
Yes, absolutely. So for our unhoused population, we have been able to provide motel rooms for folks to make sure that they aren't able to, so that it's not spreading in a shelter setting.
And we're not putting anyone in any mass facility
No.
because of testing. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely not.
Thank you for clarifying. I thought that was the answer, but always good to ask. And Michelle, Director Stevens.
Hi, good morning, board. Just a couple points to clarify as well. Our largest expense in our budget is staffing costs, as is usual, as typical. So that's this contract is the cost of having 10 people plus a manager until April. And so as folks that have been publicly commenting today have said, we're at the point in the pandemic where we can't do contact tracing for everybody because of the number of cases that we have. So that is exactly why some people get a letter that's automatically generated once the state system that public health jurisdictions use to identify cases, to learn of cases that our lab hasn't done the actual testing for. That's how we get notified. And so some groups, most of the general population gets a letter from public health that notifies them that they've tested positive and what to do about that. there is no follow-up. There is no, we're at that point where it's not even useful to do that type of contact tracing anymore. Contact investigation and contact tracing is communicable disease prevention and intervention 101. This is what we have learned through science and research over decades and decades of time, that this is how you stop the spread of a communicable disease. We use this for tuberculosis, syphilis, chlamydia, various other communicable diseases. So this is typical public health science and typical public health practice. For COVID-19, we had to scale up. And so, as we've said, the state was paying for it. The state is starting to transition to county jurisdictions taking over that and providing the funding to public health, which, let's just not forget that over the last 10 years, local public health departments have been financially gutted. And so hence 2 public health nurses in our CD program prior to COVID. We're grateful that the governor and the state has now decided to fund ongoing local health departments. But this is what we are mandated to do in public health, to prevent the spread of communicable diseases, to promote immunizations, because we know that immunizations work. And so this is what this contract is for. It's till April. And we anticipate once this Omicron surge goes down and we continue to progress through the pandemic, this will just be another communicable disease in our program that staff get notified of, just like any other communicable disease. That's what COVID will become. No one is trying to sensationalize this any more than we need to. Everybody in public health is tired of this as well. So I hope that answers questions. We absolutely need this outside support for staffing costs and for staffing for our team so that they can focus on other areas of public health.
All right, thank you. Any other supervisors have any questions or a motion to approve the item 18?
So moved. Second.
All right, I don't see any other hands up. So Nikki would proceed to vote, or can you please take the roll call vote?
Sure. Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell? Supervisor Bushnell?
Sorry, I lost my mouse.
Okay, Supervisor Bohn?
Yes, and thank you. And what I said is, tell me you need it and I'll vote for it. But I think clarifications are good. Thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Right, thank you. So now we're going to move on to matters initiated by board members. And this item comes to us from Supervisors Madrone and Wilson, and it's regarding a resolution in support of local community halls. So I'll hand it over to the 2 of you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this item comes to us today just simply to ask for support for our community halls. There's a lot of convoluted discussion going on around community halls, granges, and everything else. And that's not what this is about. This is about supporting our local community halls, some of which were literally built by the community long before they became a Grange hall. And then a lot of things has changed over the years. But I'm going to leave it to the folks that are here with us today as panelists from these 3 different community halls to add further detail to this discussion. But I just want to say, in its basic simplicity today, this resolution is before us to simply offer our support to our local community halls. And so with that, I would like to hand it over to Rowetta from the Fieldbrook Community Hall, and then she can introduce the next 2 panelists, if that works for you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome,
Rowetta. Oh, you done mute yourself.
Unmute, Rowetta. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rowetta Miller, and I'm here to support the community halls. And thank you for allowing me this time to speak. I joined the Fieldbrook Community Club in 1980, nearly 42 years ago, and I joined the Grange a year later. So I am familiar with both. Keeping it simple, I'll refer to the Fieldbrook Community Hall as FCC. According to existing secretarial records, FCC was formed in 1927. A clubhouse was built by the community for FCC in 1938. From records, it appears FCC came in contact with the Grange when Blue Lake Grange began renting the Fieldbrooks Hall at $5 a night for dances. FCC discovered from Blue Lake that if a Grange was formed, insurance cost would be much less. Fieldbrook Grange formed in 1951. Property deeded to the Grange and the hall received affordable insurance. Unique and important clauses were included in the deed by the FCC and accepted by Grange. Briefly stated, clauses reserve the rights and privileges for FCC to use the building without cost. And in the event the Grange organization shall be dissolved or discontinued to operate and function as a Grange organization, then the entire title to the property described shall revert back to the FCC, their successors or assigns. For 83 years, our community has kept our hall open and in good repair. We paid all the expenses, including all the property taxes and insurance, with no help from the Grange organization. Grange has now stopped carrying the insurance coverage for community halls. That was the primary reason Fieldbrook Grange was formed. Our hall had to seek out insurance for a much higher rate. The original Grange my husband and I joined worked to protect small farmers. They were community oriented and fought against corporations. The newly formed and chartered California State Grange appears to have become what the original State Grange fought against. It is difficult to fathom that when a community donates land, builds the hall, and maintains it consistently for many years, that a large corporation like the Grange can suddenly lay claim to it. This corporate land grab is an obvious injustice. Fieldbrook Community Hall does have a petition located at the Fieldbrook Market where around 120 signatures have been collected to save our community hall. We are a rural area and the only hall in the valley for many events. If you haven't signed yet and wish to support the hall, we'd appreciate a signature. Fieldbrook is a unique place made up of a variety of people who take pride in their community and wish to save their community hall for community. Thank you, supporters. Events that have taken place in the past besides rentals include birthday parties, weddings, receptions, memorials, 4-H and youth meetings, art show, talent show, international students hold fundraising dinner, Super Bowl Sunday breakfast, which has been our largest fundraising event and covers our hall expenses. And we've had to forgo that the last couple of years because of COVID. Also, we hold a harvest festival, a craft fair, and 2 years ago, we began a walk to end Alzheimer's, where all the money goes to support research and care. So we do wish to keep the community hall for our community and appreciate anyone who supports us. Thank you.
And thank you,
Rowetta. And so I'm going to assume that Margie Plant would be next. Does that sound right, Rowetta?
And that sounds right. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
yes.
Welcome.
Okay, good morning. My name is Margie Plant. I support this resolution presented before the Board of Supervisors. This resolution recognizes the value of the continued existence of these local halls, which provide important services, educational opportunities, and good fellowship for their communities. This has been the way things were for over 8 decades. It can only be considered as a takeover of community property. This forced return to an organization, the Grange, that now claims they own the Humboldt County properties where these halls stand. At this point, the Grange Corporation can shutter sell, and remove from use these valuable community assets. The Grange's message is that you can leave what your community built, funded, and created with us. It's our way or the highway. This attitude does not harmonize with who the Grange purports to be. The legal proceedings thus far have not resulted in justice for our communities. We propose a solution where both independent halls and a Grange chapter can coexist in each community. You can find out more information and sign a petition at saveourcommunityhalls.com. I appreciate that you are considering to support this resolution for our community halls. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. And Steve, is there another?
Is there anyone else, Rowetta?
I don't see they're on right now, so I'm
Okay.
unsure unless you can see them.
No, I don't see anybody within the panelists. There may or may not be individuals in the public, but of course they'll get their 3 minutes once the chair calls upon them. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, so Supervisors Madrone and Bohn, or Vice Chair Madrone and Supervisor Wilson. Sorry, get the right ones here. How do you want to proceed on this? Do you want to go for public comment, or do you wish to have conversation here first?
Steve, I'll let you lead the way, but I'm happy to take public comment.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. Let's take public comment and then have a discussion amongst the board. Thank you.
All right, so we will go to public comment. And again, this item is basically regarding a letter of support for local community halls, or a resolution in support of local community halls. So that is what you'll be commenting on. And at the moment, we don't have any attendees with their hands up yet. So if you wish to comment on this item, press *9 now. One 0116. I believe this is you, Ash. Welcome.
Hello, yes, I just want to say I support public meeting halls, but I think that they should also recognize people's medical exemptions. And I recently had an experience at the Eureka Open Door Clinic where I was able to actually show them the county, state, and federal medical guidelines that they seem to be unaware of. So I think that in all county buildings, enforcing this, public halls, as you're talking about funding, that people enforcing this should be aware of the actual medical guidelines where people have legitimate reasons where they cannot wear masks indoors. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ash. And there are no other hands up. So we'll go back to the board. Supervisor Madrone.
I can jump in just for a second if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do understand that there is this, longstanding conflict between the Grange, and actually, maybe it's not actually that very longstanding. It's somewhat in the relevance to these arrangements, which have been 80 years on for some and longer and shorter for others. There has been of late this conflict, and I think there's some pretty decent discussion and description of that. And there's been a bunch of legal battles about this, and they seem to have on individual halls. I'm going to say, from this perspective, this resolution is just in support of those folks who are trying to maintain what's been moving forward and what they've found successful in keeping these community spaces together, and in hopes that the Grange as an institution will come to a place where they can work with these community halls to really benefit the entire community, and not necessarily just to the benefit of the organization of the Grange, or how they perceive themselves as having benefit. That being said, I don't think that we are taking a legal stand necessarily in terms of what's been adjudicated, and we don't really have the authority or the jurisdiction to do so. But in this case, we're just asking and making a statement of support and request for the Grange and the community halls to be able to move forward in the most beneficial way possible.
Yeah, well put, through the chair. Well put, Supervisor Wilson. Yeah, really, that's really simply what it is. And as Margie said, everybody's really working hard to try and find a compromise that works for the communities, for the Granges, et cetera. And really looking at the mission of the Granges, that's all we're asking, is to continue to evolve with our communities and the folks that have stepped up to maintain these halls at great personal expense. So anyway, that's all this really is simply a support for those community halls. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other supervisors? Supervisor Bohn?
Well, and I know Rowetta just wants a place to dance. I know that. So I know that for a fact of 40 years of watching that happen, so, or longer, but anyway. I appreciate, now we've had quite a few late comers into this, Michael Evenson, Kathy Moley, the Grange I belonged at, Humboldt, and then the Mattole Grange. And I know there's been 11 lawsuits, and I think they're 0 for 11. And I know this is, I talked to Supervisor Wilson. I appreciate him looking out. You know, I contacted, we just had the state, Lillian Booth or Miss Booth from San Francisco was up at the Red Crest Grange and had some discussions, and we're working our way through it. And I mean, it pains a lot of people to see the Bayside Grange locked up and shut down, and there are ways around it. And, you know, there's a lot of things being said. I'd love to stay away from this one. I'll probably just support it because I want to make sure Rowetta dances. But the thing is, I think to look at this, that this is so far, and we're good on you guys for listening to your people. But I think we would, if we listened to all the people, we realize this is, I think the horses are already out of the barn, and I'm sorry to say, and I think the Granges and community halls and everything else, and I've been to enough meetings at the Red Crest one to understand that. But I think the horses are so far out of this that you'll notice that they're just ticking off left and right. So we're going to have to organize and figure out a way we can work with them, because I mean, their theory now is they shut them down for 7 years and then they put them up for sale. And I can tell you that if you take Fieldbrook, and I've been in every Grange a lot, but I'm not as much, but I mean, if you take every Grange and how much time and effort is put into them, there is not one that's going to survive 7 years without any maintenance, and you're not going to have people maintaining it. So that other part scares me too. So I know we love to word these things different. I would love to have, you know, a different wording, but I'll just go along with it. And it's a good thing you brought Rowetta.
Thank you, Rex.
All right, any other questions from supervisors or comments?
No, I just make the motion that we approve this resolution. And speaking to Supervisor Bones, I think there's a lot in what he said that I think is correct. And I think there's the push against the Grange, and then there's the push and pull within the Grange organization as well. I want to recognize there are people in the community here that are Grange members separate from these institutions that have similar concerns and are working within the Grange organization to see what they can do to make those changes. But nonetheless, the community halls have done their investment in these spaces. And I believe they deserve our support in their, I would call it, struggle at the moment. So that's it.
So I heard a
Second
motion in there.
That was a
And then
motion.
second.
That was a motion, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go back to
Second.
that. Thank you. And Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you through the chair. I just want to recognize that I am very supportive of community venues. And, I do think there's a push and pull with the Grange. I think the Grange Association, in my young childhood, it was everybody belonged to the Grange and got Grange insurance and appreciated what it brought to communities. I just really am supportive of the community venues and recognize that they're meeting places and they're centers around communities. So, I like Supervisor Bohn, want to stay out of the battle between the Grange and that kind of thing, but I am supportive of the venues.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Madrone?
Yeah, and don't we all need a place to dance? So at any rate, appreciate that, Supervisor Bohn, and ready to vote on the measure.
All right. Nikki, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure thing. Supervisor Bohn.
Sure.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
And Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
And thank you, Margie and Rowetta, for being here. I haven't seen her dance yet, but I think I'm going to have to now. I've heard enough about it. All right, so we'll move on to our departmental item today. It comes to us from the clerk of the board, and it's an update on the board chambers equipment upgrade project and in-person meetings. And I'm looking forward to all this when we get back in there. But Ms. Hayes.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. The item before you is the second update on the board chambers upgrade project. And I'm happy to report we are 95% complete. All of the equipment's been installed, sound equipment, TV monitors, wiring. We've even conducted vote-cast training for staff. The final component to having everything in place and ready to go back in-person meetings with a hybrid option is for us to conduct a series of mock meetings involving board members. So we have the opportunity to train them on how to vote on their electronic devices so that those votes feed directly into the vote-cast system. Public will be able to view them on the monitor behind the chairman's chair on the dais, as well as the public will be able to view the timer that Chair Bass currently operates is built into the vote-cast system, so Chair Bass won't be having to push buttons. That will automatically be taken care of through the vote-cast system, as well as the audible that alerts members to the 30-second timing of 3 minutes. So that's one thing that Supervisor Bass will not have to move forward with the new vote-cast system. We're excited about the project. We believe that it's going to bring our board chambers into the 21st century, so to speak. And the use of VoteCast is going to make it easier for the public to see how board members vote directly on items that are on the board's agenda. The motions and recommended motions will also show on the VoteCast machine. So it's going to be, from a visual perspective, it's going to be much easier for members of the public, even if they aren't present in the chambers, to view voting in real time as it happens in the board chambers. So with that, we do have a recommendation for the board to consider the possibility of going back into in-person meetings the 1st of March, which allows us the month of February to do testing and the remaining training of our board members that need to happen. We do believe we'll be ready to go by the 1st of March. And we are recommending that the board consider, pending COVID concerns, opening the board back up to in-person meetings with the first meeting in March. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll bring it back to the board.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I did want to mention too, I've been kind of asking for this ever since I came over from the city, because what I think VoteCast does, and I think it does provide more transparency and everyone votes at the same time. So not saying anything bad about this group, but we've all seen some meeting somewhere where there's someone's waiting to end and go, well, I'm really going to go here, but I can go over there. You know, it's like there's no more squishy figuring out where you're going to be. It is, you decide, you vote, we find out at the same time.
Not all of us do that.
I wouldn't speak about you, Supervisor Bohn, but yes, it does happen occasionally. And it's not just this board, it's many boards. Yes, Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah, through the chair, I've been going in every day and watching the progress and everything else, and the safety protocols and the work that our staff, you know, our public works and our IT staff has done has been over the top. And I think everybody's probably going to feel a lot more comfortable. I know a lot of us are going to a lot more public events with a lot of people. So I think probably sitting at a dais with 4 of us is probably not going to be a bad thing. So I think we're getting out by looking at our travel and stuff like that. So I think it's probably going to be a great thing to get back in there and be where we have to be. And we can train Michelle how it's supposed to happen and show her where the chambers are. That might be a little tough for her, but besides that, I think that's what the people want to see, and giving them the option, and especially electronically. I can't say enough for how much staff has cleaned that up and made it accessible for the public, both our physically disabled public and our open public as a whole, and especially for those that will come in remote. So I appreciate all the work's done, and I can't wait to March 1st for the fruition of those for all that work. Thank you guys, everyone involved.
Supervisor Bushnell.
I also just want to say thank you for all the work and getting the Zoom capability into the chambers for the outlying communities. I think is super important and allows accessibility to people that are 2.5 hours away without having to drive that for 3-minute public comment. So, and I see I'm not in Eureka as often as Rex or in the office, but every time I come in a couple times a week, the staff is in there working. And I know there's been a lot of frustration. You know, it's not an easy transition. So Kathy and your team, thanks so much. And I'd like to make a motion that we go back into chambers March 1st.
Second.
And with everything else that's going on with the new chambers and everything, yeah, just the whole item.
Second.
We got a motion second. Supervisor Madrone.
Yeah, just very briefly, also want to thank everybody for all their hard work to create these options for increased involvement by the community. And I know this hasn't been easy, so thank you for all of the work that our clerk of the board staff and everybody else that was mentioned previously have done.
Thank you. I'm also, yes, Supervisor Wilson.
Add me to the list of the thank yous, and that's looking great in there. And I support this with, again, always the caution of, we voted to be in the chambers a few times already, and things just happen, and we're just having to be adaptive and appreciative of everybody and patient, but crossing fingers and hoping that this one is going to be the one that I'm supportive.
All right, thank you. So we will go out to the public. So if you're interested in talking on this one, press *9 to raise your hand. And while we're waiting to see if anyone does, I want to thank staff for all their dedication to making this happen. And I'm going to be really interested to see how training of the Board of Supervisors goes. So that could be actually kind of a little bit of comedy for a while for you guys, but looking forward to it. All right, we have a couple hands up. Again, this is on the chambers update and going back into the chambers March 1st. So we have 0151 is the first speaker. If you're 0151, welcome.
Hi, Dottie Russell here. Sounds like a great idea to be doing both remote and in person in March. I'm very happy that we're all coming to that because I think that'll be a really wonderful way that people can participate and feel like they have a voice, and that the supervisors can also hear of some concerns that people have that haven't had an opportunity because they're not very techy. So I think it's great. I had suggested in the past, but I'll throw it out there again, that the planning department in Redway is a nice building and very comfortable. And that could be actually a remote site where it could just be a Zoom and people could gather there, which would probably reduce a bit of frustration and allow people down here to have more of a voice. Since my experience in the last 20 years is that Southern Humboldt is often forgotten about as far as some of the grants and some of the things that are going on. So I look forward to March, and we'll all get by until March comes. So stay healthy and thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. And 0116, I think that's you, Ash, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say I definitely support the return of in-person meetings. I just wanted to ask about, I know at the Eureka City Council meetings, the call-ins, they have like a screen and all that, and people who call in like through the Zoom actually do like video too, and I think that definitely adds another dimension to those who are not able to attend in person. That's just curious if that's going to be part of it. And then also I just wanted to, just like the Eureka City Council, like their mask mandates inside, are they going to be like the same there, or are you going to allow medical exemptions for people who wish to attend the meetings in person who can't wear masks to be there without masks? I think that's, even though you're, offering an alternative to calling it in person, I think it is still discrimination based on like how, ineffective the masks are. And it recently came out that, only the N95 are effective, but even then with like, if you look at the micron size and the size of the water molecule the virus travels on, it still passes right through it, especially when it's not sealed to the face. You look at people breathing in the winter with a mask on, the water vapor just comes right out the side. It's not doing anything really. And I just had a discussion with one of the Eureka City Council members. I won't name names, but she said she was aware of the N95 thing, but, and she pulled one out of her pocket. But then like the next day at the, my body, my choice rally, same person was wearing a cloth mask. And it seems a lot of people, they just got addicted to it as like a fashion statement. I was talking to someone in a drive-through and it's like, oh, it matches my makeup, or I can wear it with these clothes. But I think it should really just be dropped in the, in the new meeting arena. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Ash. And 5300, press *6 to unmute, and I think that's Adam.
Yeah, this is Adam Lustig. Thank you. Calling in from District 4. Yeah, I also was curious about the mask thing. I find it interesting that, you pass this mask mandate, and clearly in the mask mandate allows for medical exemptions and refers to the CDPH and their guidance, which says medical, including mental health issues, people that aren't able to wear a mask. But yet, you have several businesses around town and the county and Eureka City that just don't allow for any medical exemptions whatsoever. And, throughout my entire life, I've always been told that you have to follow the law to the letter and to how it is written. And it seems that even the county is picking and choosing what part of their own mandate to enforce. I haven't really been able to get an explanation for that. I know that the businesses say when they call public health, it supports them in not allowing the medical exemptions. And the police just came to step back and they don't want to touch such a hot button issue. But, you do have the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a $70,000 fine for anyone that, doesn't allow someone with disabilities to enter their business or wherever. I'm just wondering like why this arbitrary enforcement of the law and why you passed a mandate with a medical exemption.
Okay,
choose
and
to
Adam,
ignore it.
don't worry. Adam, I'm not cutting you off. I'm just stopping your time to say, can you just try to keep it to the chambers and the masks? I mean, I'm getting,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's what it is all about, because I'm looking at, my medical exemption is not going to be allowed when you open the chamber. So I'm probably still going to go in remotely. So, that's where it ties in, because, I know the county itself has not allowed medical exemptions, and, that's the mandate and that's the way it was written. So that's just where the confusion is. That's all. Thank you.
All right, and thank you. And I can understand that. All right, there's no more hands up. So we do have a motion and a second, and when we get closer to the time, I'm sure we'll be able to have, we'll probably have some type of update before we actually go live. Would that be correct, Kathy? Or at least some notice to the public on how it's going to go. Ish.
Yes, Chair Bass, and we were actually planning on sending a press release out as well to try and encompass more members of the community to let them know that we will begin in-person meetings the 1st of March. So we will be sending out a press release.
And we'll also be sending out how it's going to operate, which we still, there's a little bit of work there to be done as far as public comment. So are there any other questions or comments before we go to the vote? All right, see none. Nikki, can we please vote?
Absolutely. Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
And Supervisor Bohn.
Sure.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. So our next item is a time set for 10:30 that I could talk for the next minute, but since we can't actually start the item until at least 10:30, I'm going to request a 1-minute break so I can, I'll be right back. We can't start until officially 10:30 or after. All right, so this next item, actually, a few of you are going to get a longer break. Excuse me. Okay, thank you very much. So we are going to this public hearing 10:30 time set. Oops, wait. I'm all messed up. Okay, 10:30. This public hearing comes to us regarding the EFID, which is the Samoa Peninsula Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. So at this time, the Board of Supervisors will adjourn as the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, and the appointed members of Supervisors Wilson, myself, and Bohn, along with Chris Trop and Tim Callison, will reconvene as the Public Financing Authority for the Samoa Peninsula Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. So now that we've done that, I'll turn this over to Scott Adair.
Thank you, Chair Bass. My name is Scott Adair. I'm the Division Director for the Humboldt County Office of Economic Development. The Board of Supervisors has adjourned as the Board of Supervisors, and here now convenes as the Public Finance Authority for the Samoa Peninsula Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. Following the agenda, we would start with roll call. Chair, would you like me to call roll?
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Great. Public Finance Authority Chair, Virginia Bass.
I'm here.
Member Rex Bohn.
Yep.
Member Mike Wilson.
Presente.
Member Timothy Callison.
Here.
Member Chris Straw.
Here.
All are present, Chair.
All right, and thank you. And my printer at home wasn't working, so the actual agenda for this is not in front of me. But if I do anything wrong, I'm assuming you will correct me. So I will go.
Absolutely.
I will go. I'll go to staff report first, since we're on you, and you can direct from there.
Sure, would be happy to. Approval of minutes is next on the agenda, but we can move to staff report or updates if you prefer.
We can do approval of the minutes. That should be
Move
fairly
approval
simple.
of minutes.
Is there a second? Okay, this is where Tim or Chris, you guys can join in. Is there a second? Okay, Chris is seconded.
Second. Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait, sorry. Tim actually did. Way to jump in there, though. I appreciate that. So we've got a motion and a second. We do have public comment on these minutes. If there's public in the that wish to comment on the minutes of the last meeting of the EFID, this would be your time. 4691. I do see your hand up. Is this the item you wish to comment on? The minutes from the EFID meeting? Okay, taking that as a no. So we will go back. So is there, we have a motion, a second. Can we have a roll call vote on the minutes? Scott?
Yes. Supervisor Virginia Bass.
Yes.
PFA member Rex Bohn.
Yes.
PFA member Mike Wilson.
Yes.
PFA member Tim Callison.
Yes.
And PFA member Chris Drop.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. And Scott, shall we move on now to the staff report? Or, so like I said, literally, I don't have the EFID.
That's all right, Chair. I can lead through the next agenda items if you would like. Item C is for public comment on non-agenda items.
Cool. I was going to take a guess, but figured I should find out for sure. All right, we have one hand up. And if you are wishing to comment on a non-agenda item, this is the non-agenda items specific to the Samoa Peninsula Financing District Public Financing Authority. So 4691, is that what you were calling to comment on? Star 6 unmute if it is. All right, we will go back now to Scott. I think we're on to the next item.
Yes, this would be a report out on meetings attended and community feedback received, as well as staff updates. I can report to the Public Finance Authority that staff continues to engage with the public to educate and communicate on the development of the IFP, which is the Infrastructure Financing Plan for the Samoa Peninsula Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. We've held meetings and conducted presentations with the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, with Rotary Clubs, with Fire District on the Samoa Peninsula, and other stakeholders in the community. There have been very few comments received by our office on the development of the IFP, although we have incorporated some changes. Part of the agenda today under 2 agenda items is to hear any additional written or oral comments the public may have on the proposed infrastructure financing plan, which will come back to the full Board of Supervisors for approval at the 3rd public hearing, which is slated for March. As far as other staff updates, I can turn it over to Economic Development Administrative Analyst Tanner Etherton to talk about the most recent update to the IFP and to also share with Public Finance Authority members information that we received from County Council concerning the appointment of alternates. Tanner?
Thank you, Scott. As far as updates to the IFP, there has been no changes, although we have recently included the boundary map and legal description as required by EFID law. That was provided to us by Public Works. So thank you to all the people down there for the hard work they put into this. And that is included in the agenda item as well. County Council, we did give us some feedback on the ability to appoint alternates to the PFA. According to County Council, the Board of Supervisors may appoint 1 alternate for all the board members of the Board of Supervisors and 1 alternate for the public members of the Public Financing Authority. And that's how it stands now. As Scott mentioned, there will be a Board of Supervisors meeting to approve the IFP before the 3rd public hearing. And that should occur in the next few weeks. And the 3rd public hearing is scheduled for March 1st. And that's all I have there, Scott.
That concludes our staff updates, Chair Bass.
I have a question. I had a question. It's just we talked about the alternates, an alternate for the board and an alternate for the public. Because currently we have the set members, don't we? We don't have any alternates?
We currently do not have any alternates. The board has appointed 3 members to the PFA and 2 public members. The board would need to appoint an alternate for both public and board representation.
And is that something you'd expect today, or can we do that in the future meeting?
We'll bring that back in the future. Just wanted to share the finding with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Supervisor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Bass. I just a quick question with relationship to the outreach, and maybe I missed it. I was just wondering, in that outreach, did you guys have contact with the CCP Community Collaborative, Peninsula PCC, the Peninsula Community Collaborative being run by RCAA? And if you haven't, would you guys mind reaching out to them to see if, because they just do a lot of community work on the peninsula itself, not necessarily with, Rotaries or other organized, organizations. I just think it's just a good group to maybe reach out to and see if maybe they might help do some outreach within the community of residents on the peninsula.
We've not yet. We have conducted surveys of landowners on the peninsula, but that's a great idea, and we can add that to our outreach list.
Great, thanks. That's it. That's all I got for now.
Supervisor Bohn.
So, and have you done the outreach now? Are you saying we're going to do more outreach, or what exactly are you saying there, Scott? I'm confused.
Sure.
Has there been one round of outreach already?
There has been one round of outreach already. Survey sent out to all property owners. Every time we have a public hearing like we have today, we also send notifications out to all of the property owners, which is required via legislation. The reason why the legislation requires 3 public hearings, Supervisor Bohn, is just to ensure that there is ample opportunity for the public to provide feedback.
Are we getting them back in a robust manner, or are they waiting until the last minute, or?
No, I think we've received fairly consistent and positive feedback. From the beginning, we also relied on CCRP out of HSU and Connie Stewart's team to help solicit that feedback. They've done a great job soliciting that for us as well.
Okay. And we'll see those?
Yes.
Great. That cover answer your questions, Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
All right. And I don't see anyone in the public with their hand up to comment on this item. So
if there is no one
just to accept and receive and file the report.
The second item on the agenda is to simply receive any public comment or have any discussion or propose any possible action for the IFP. If there is none, no further discussion or public comment or recommendations from the PFA, then your PFA may adjourn and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, and I did ask, there was no hand up at the time, but then while you were speaking, there is a hand up, so I will go to see if this person, 4691, if you're here to speak about the Public Financing Authority item, this would be the time. Hello?
Yes, hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, are you here to speak on the Public Financing Authority?
Well, I wanted to speak earlier, but I was having a malfunction on my phone about the Samoa.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You said you're speaking about the Samoa. I'll let you continue. It sounds like you might be on the right item.
Yes. Good morning, Humboldt County Supervisors. On the Samoa Peninsula in Fairhaven, California. Oh, by the way, my name is Jennifer Jensen.
Sorry, Jen, I'm not stopping you. I'm gonna let you go. I just want to let you know you have 3 minutes. I didn't get to tell you that yet. All right. So
okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Jennifer Jensen. On the Samoa Peninsula in Fairhaven, California, where 3 masted schooners were built and sailed on Humboldt Bay. My 1897 home was also built using outhouses on skids. Years later, septic tanks with leach lines were buried in the sand between the Pacific Ocean and Humboldt Bay, where high tides twice daily pushed the sand into leach lines, clogging them with sand. It causes effluent overflow, a hazardous environment. For over 120 years, Fairhaven has needed this Samoa wastewater project to connect into. Please help us to hook up. Thank you and have a blessed 2022.
All right. Thank you, Jen. And I just realized right at you got to the end, I think you wanted to talk about the other item we have on the wastewater over there, but we've got your comments and you were duly noted. So thank you for your patience there. Okay, there's no other hands up. So go back. Do we have any further direction to provide for staff? I'll ask Chris, since we always talk to the board members normally, I'd like to ask Tim and Chris if they have anything to add, and then I'll go to Supervisor Bohn.
And I guess this goes just, what?
No,
Afterwards? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Tim, Chris, give her hell.
I'm all good, thanks.
Okay.
Nothing to report.
Yes, go ahead, Rex.
Chris, good too?
Yep.
All right. And I guess this just goes to Scott, and I just read the first part. So are we still going to take all those legal lots that are in Fairhaven? And the way I'm reading this is even though there's going to be sewer to hook up to, we're not going to allow any more subdivision?
That's a different item. Supervisor Bohn, that's the planning.
Oh, okay, I'm wrong. Okay, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, but we'll be talking about that one also.
Oh, I printed the wrong thing. Sorry.
Commenter got you down the wrong track there.
Right. Well, Samoa, we have Samoa twice on here. So
well, it's all going to jumble together though.
Yeah, but I don't think,
yeah.
I don't
go
think
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's weird. Is there any further direction that we want to give to Scott? I don't know what that would be, like more public input. Is there an interest of the board that you'd like to have them take from today's meeting or just to receive and file what we've heard?
I'm good.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that or are we ready to roll?
Well, Supervisor Bohn looks like he has a question on his face, so I want to make sure. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask them?
No, I mean, no, we're fine. I'm just making sure as we move this forward, are we moving it forward for further development or people to utilize, or is this what I'm saying yeah, I know what we're doing on the taxation and stuff, but I'm ready to move forward. We're good. I just got questions.
Okay, well, and I think some of those questions will definitely come up in the
public hearings.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of, we go back to Scott. We have, I think, what was a motion and a second, or at least the inferences of that, to just receive and file this item. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding. I'll do roll call.
If there was not a motion, I'll make a motion. I did that. Did it really happen? I don't remember.
I thought you did, and then I thought Rex did. Second.
I didn't.
Okay,
Well,
so
I'll make a motion
in my mind.
I'm making a motion, receive and file. There you go.
Thank you. You said you were fine with everything. I made assumptions. I heard motion. Okay, we have a kind of.
I'll do roll call.
Okay, I have a pretend motion and the pretend second. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Got it.
We'll roll call this, then you can adjourn and get back to your board meeting. Chair Bass.
Yes, please.
Public Finance Member Rex Bohn.
Rex. Say yes.
Yes.
Mike Wilson.
Yep.
Chris Drop.
Yes.
And Tim Callison.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Chair. We'll be back with the final report and that feedback to share at the third meeting in March.
All right, I'm going to close this public hearing, and I'm so glad there's only one more of these. It is confusing to try to keep track of.
Only one more. And
there we are.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you both, Tim and Chris, for coming into this meeting. And at this time, we are going to adjourn as the Public Financing Authority and reconvene as the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors. So we just need Supervisors Madrone and Bushnell to rejoin us. It's always such a fun one. All right, so while we're waiting for Supervisor Bushnell, our 1045 did get removed from today's agenda for future. So looks like now we are, Supervisor Bohn. I think this is one you're looking for. This public hearing comes to us from Planning and Building, and it's regarding the adoption of the Coastal Commission modification to amendments to the Humboldt Bay Area Plan and zoning maps to allow the Samoa Peninsula wastewater project move forward. It does not need introduction because it is, I'll include the two, the case number PLN 2020-16734. It does not need to be introduced because that title is enough according to County Council. So at this time, I'm opening the public hearing and I'd like to go to Director Ford.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Good morning. John Ford with the Planning and Building Department. Joining me is John Miller to present the Coastal Commission's adopted changes to the Humboldt Bay Area Plan to facilitate development of the Samoa Peninsula wastewater project. This is not the wastewater project, but our policy changes needed to accommodate the project. Your board adopted changes to the Humboldt Bay Area Plan on February 9th, 2021. That was transmitted to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission adopted it with changes, recommended changes in December of 2021. John Miller will give a brief overview of those in just a moment, but I want to emphasize a very important point about this policy document, is that it reflects the need to balance many different factors, including protecting groundwater quality, allowing residents to maintain and improve their homes, concerns with sea level rise, and tsunami inundation. I want to say it also, this document at this point looks very different from the initial draft prepared by county staff. And it also looks very different from the first set of comments provided by the Coastal Commission staff. When balancing divergent concerns, it's not possible to make everybody happy. In fact, many times people are left just a little bit unhappy. This is reflective of this situation, but the policy document being presented to you today achieves the objective of creating a regulatory framework to allow the wastewater treatment system to go forward. So the overall need to balance public concern and private property concerns has been given an extreme amount of attention in this particular case. Now I'm going to ask John Miller to just briefly go through some of the changes recommended by the Coastal Commission.
Good morning. My name is John Miller. First, I'd like to apologize for disturbing the meeting earlier by not muting. I'd like to say that Troy Nicolini, the chair of the board of the Peninsula Community Services District, is available to answer your questions any questions you may have for him. I'd like to request that attachment 5, which contains the clean version of the resolution and ordinance, be referenced in the action by your board rather than attachments 1 and 2, which were included to highlight the Coastal Commission's suggested modifications. The local coastal program amendment is intended to provide an exemption to allow the extension of wastewater services outside of the urban limit line, to allow the immediate establishment of services to structures that are served by on-site wastewater systems, and to allow connections to interim conditionally permitted industrial coastal dependent uses, to allow for wastewater outside of the town of Samoa to be treated at the Samoa's wastewater treatment plant, and to apply a Q zone to the community of Fairhaven to apply interim performance standards to protect new development within 100 feet of the 300 feet of the system, to protect them from geologic and flood hazards. On February 9th, your board adopted a resolution 21-19 and ordinance 2665 amending the Humboldt Bay Area Plan, and it was immediately promptly transmitted to the Coastal Commission for certification. Staff agreed that the amendment was consistent with the Coastal Act, but identified some inadequacies relating to further relating to geologic hazards. They recommended suggested modifications, which were approved by the Coastal Commission on December 16th. The Coastal Commission's modifications require that the Peninsula Community Services District disclose to each property owner that the connection to service doesn't convey or imply any entitlement or commitment for coastal permit for the expansion or replacement of development on the property. The suggested modifications disallow new conditionally permitted uses and accessory dwelling units. These are conditionally permitted uses that would otherwise be allowed in the zone. And it requires that that applicants for new development in Fairhaven execute a deed restriction against their property, acknowledging the coastal hazards to which they're exposed. And it also requires that the replacement or redevelopment of 50% or more of an existing structure would be subject to the new special restrictions relating to sea level rise and tsunami inundation. So we recommend that your board approve the clean version of the resolution and ordinance in attachment 5, allowing this project to proceed.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions for John? I also want to give Troy Nicolini an opportunity to chime in if you'd like. And I just want to say how much I really enjoy being able to say officially Peninsula Community Services District. It only took a long time to get this, Troy. So did you want to chime in at all? There you are.
Thank you. I'm really here just to answer questions, but I do want to point out the one issue, the deed restriction. I'll just remind the board members that in California, real estate disclosures require all geologic hazards to be disclosed. So to some extent, that's redundant and won't produce a new burden on homeowners. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Troy. All right, any supervisors have any questions or comments on this item?
I just want to say that I think this is has moved forward as well as it could, considering all the agencies that have been involved, and I'm ready to make a motion to move forward after we hear from public comment.
All right, we will go to public comment. Okay, we'll go to public comment. I do believe Jen spoke during the last item, and I think she was speaking to this item is where she meant to speak. So Jen, we got you duly noted on the comments here. I don't see any other hands up in the public. So we'll go back to the board, and Supervisor Bohn, you had a question during the last one that might have been related to this item. So did you want to follow up on that?
I'm hoping Director Ford happened. I'm just trying to figure out, there's quite a few legal lots still out in Fairhaven in the area. And I read this and I apologize that I didn't call you before this. Are we saying that they will not be able to hook up to sewer I'm just saying, are we going to be able to utilize any of those lots? Because back to the previous thing, we're basing a lot of our tax base out there on structures, property tax and things like that. So I'm wondering, is Fairhaven going to stay right where it's at? And if somebody has the terrible happens of a fire and they lose, 60% of their house and try to rebuild, we won't be able to do that? Or I'm just trying to get some clarification. I know. So
I think, John, can you help me remember? It seems like within 300 feet, they comply with the standards that are in place. And then outside of 300 feet.
Yeah, the development within 300 feet, a connection can be made to the public sewer main, and beyond 300 feet, lots would not be able to connect. There's a prohibition on additional extension of the public sewer main without an amendment to a further amendment to the Humboldt Bay Area plan. So within 300 feet, new development can occur on existing legal lots subject to the requirements that would protect lives and property from tsunami and sea level rise and protect environmentally sensitive habitat areas. Outside of 300 feet, development would occur in the same, or could occur in the same manner it may be allowed now, which is with an on-site wastewater system that meets the requirements of the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
And John, with that, through the chair, how many of those new developments have been built in the last 15 years with those requirements to the wastewater and the Water Control Board? And then the other factor, how many with the where the line is going to be running, how many lots will be actually within 300 feet of that line?
I don't believe that any new residences with on-site wastewater systems, new on-site wastewater systems have been permitted in the last 15 years. There were some permitted in the early 2000s, late 1990s. I think that there are somewhere between 60 and 100 lots within 300 feet of the sewer mains as in the initial designs.
Great, thank you, John.
Okay, so I see Tim's hand up. Tim, I think are you a member of the public on this one? Because I don't think you're actually part of this conversation. Okay, then I'll come back to you in just a moment. Because I'm just checking. All right. Thank you, Supervisor Bohn, for asking that question. I don't see any hands up from the Board of Supervisors, so we will go to public comment. If you're wishing to comment on this item, this is the time, talking about the wastewater in Samoa. And yes, Tim, you now have 3 minutes.
Great. Actually, I may have missed the beginning of that conversation, but I just wanted to confirm that 300-foot rule, that's residential only? Does that include commercial?
Well, we'll be able to answer that after we get on the public comment. So if you want to add more, yeah, if you want to add some more, we can come back and definitely the staff can answer that for you.
Okay, I'm completely public right now, so yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Though we will come back to that. And we do have one hand. Actually, we have 2928 has their hand raised for public comment. If you're wanting to speak on this item, we all have 3 minutes. So 2928, just press *6 to unmute. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, welcome.
Hi, thanks. This is Rob Holman. I'm the new development director for the Humboldt Bay Harbor District. And on behalf of the district, just wanted to express our support for the project. It's going to be good for water quality, good for economic development, job growth, and is compatible with the district's master plan, which includes the Nordic project as well as the offshore wind projects that are coming up. So on behalf of the district, just expressing our support.
All right, thank you, Rob. We will head back to the board as I know other hands up. Are there further clarifications? And I think, John, Tim had asked a question, and can you explain how that works when it comes to, it sounds like industrial type or, business, and I'm not, or this all, because, yeah.
There aren't limitations on the industrial development.
Okay, it's more for building the residential.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of what I thought. Supervisor Bohn?
Is there any way to get more than 300 feet? And I'm just looking at, everybody's, jumping up and down for the fish and the fish farm and the wind project. And then we have the Cal Poly coming in. And so I spent some time last night on the Realtor page last night, and there's not very many houses. And I know we've met a couple times on needing to build anywhere between 1,750 and 3,500 housing units. And I don't think all the people coming are going to want to live in an 8-story apartment building. And I'm just trying to find out, we're looking at housing units that we may have available out there. So again, I was just trying to find somewhere that we can, and this is actually would be considered somewhat, I don't think it'd be sprawl. I think it'd be somewhat infill because we'll have public transit out there and there are services. So I'm just trying to figure out, because we're going to have to start setting these up and getting some areas for people to build houses here pretty soon, or else we're going to see some suffering.
Dr. Ford or
Yeah.
John Miller?
So just some thoughts on that. With the amount of information that we have currently relative to sea level rise and tsunami inundation, it was hard to take a comprehensive look at those undeveloped lots. We are currently working on an amendment, a further amendment to the Humboldt Bay Area Plan that will take a comprehensive look at sea level rise and also tsunami inundation. It may be something that comes out of those studies that would find that it would be appropriate to draft different policies, but with the information we have now, it would be hard to support that.
Well, I think you mentioned in the staff report, or I thought it mentioned in the staff report that would be something that would be revisited.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so in the staff report, it mentioned that the changes weren't substantial made by the Coastal Commission from what we had. And but it's been a year since we heard this, almost a year, I think. So can you kind of go through again how it's not substantially different from when it left here? I just had some people ask, and because it has been a year, I had our staff report, but I'd rather, get either hear from you or John a little more clarity on that so people can understand it better than what I've been trying to say.
Yeah, we can kind of walk through, those are itemized in the board report, and we can kind of walk through those. John, could you just give a quick overview of the different specific changes?
I think that statement in the staff report relates to a requirement in state law that a general plan amendment that has been considered by the Planning Commission where further changes have been made, whether or not it's required to go back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. And in talking with County Council, we felt that the changes were within the broader project considered by the Planning Commission, that there wasn't a requirement that it go back to the Planning Commission prior to coming to the board.
Yeah. Can we just walk through the changes real quick, John?
Yeah. So people who are listening they don't have our agenda in front of them.
Just to go, I guess, in further detail, the Coastal Commission wanted the wanted a really clear disclosure to owners of property within Fairhaven of the coastal hazards to which they are subject. And initially, the Coastal Commission wanted each property owner to record a deed restriction in order for the connections to their the system to their existing houses to be made. We negotiated with them, and the Peninsula Community Services District is going to develop a plan for noticing all property owners and successors and assigns of the coastal hazards. That's the first one. So this is going to be, basically a letter informing them, and when there's a change in the entity or the individual that has the sewer service, they will be notified as well. The second one is that the Coastal Commission was very concerned about additional people and development being subject to the hazards that are present in Fairhaven. And so they requested that conditionally permitted uses and accessory dwelling units not be allowed. And so currently there are no conditionally permitted uses present in Fairhaven. They might include guest houses, community assembly, bed and breakfast, neighborhood commercial, private institutions, or manufactured home parks. Those will no longer be allowed. The next is in the zoning ordinance approved by your board, we required that applicants for coastal development permits to construct a new single-family residence, written acknowledgement of the presence of the coastal hazards. The Coastal Commission requested that be a deed restriction recorded as a condition of approval. So what was previously a written acknowledgement is now a deed restriction. The Coastal Commission requested that the replacement or redevelopment that would exceed 50% of the existing structure, could be area or value, be required to meet the special restrictions that are being applied on new development. And the special restrictions relate to hardening the structure against tsunami, elevating the structure, and the same with respect to sea level rise. So that's more detail. If you'd like, we could go to the ordinance and go word by word.
Well, I'm thinking, I just like, Supervisor Bohn asked the question, and I think people are wondering, does this mean nothing will ever be done within that 300-foot radius? But to me, I'm reading it that it's not that nothing will ever be done, that there's a process and there's things that will perhaps be coming to us in the future.
And the 300-foot magic number is, we're actually using the number in the opposite way that it was intended to be used. There's a requirement that development within 300 feet of a public sewer main within the unincorporated area connect to the sewer system. And we disclosed this to the Coastal Commission, who initially wanted no new connections in Fairhaven to the public sewer system. We said they are required to connect. So these requirements are to limit the hazard or risk to new development within 300 feet. And the local coastal program amendments prohibit the extension of the public sewer main beyond 300 feet. And so that's the 300 foot part of the requirement.
I guess my question is, if the Humboldt Bay Area plan is readjusted, there's people who have properties within that, and I don't know where I'm confused is you said is different than what we had intended it to be. So if that 300 feet flip, that is a change to me, and I'm just wanting to, I didn't get any calls on it, I just want to know what to tell people in the future if it comes up.
The 300-foot was something that was negotiated prior to bringing this forward to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So that the 300-foot area within which connections can be made it has been part of the project for a considerable period of time. Something that we are applying the requirements of the Humboldt Bay Area Plan that are to be applied to additional residential development, whether it's a second residence or multifamily dwellings, that says that the first habitable floor has to be 3 to 4 feet above the tsunami inundation level, and that the structure has to be designed to withstand tsunami forces, which is a pretty high bar. The California Geologic Survey is about to come out with new requirements, which we hope that the Coastal Commission will soon accept, rather than the current requirements of the Humboldt Bay Area Plan.
All right, thanks. Supervisor Bohn?
No, so we should anticipate not building anything at the small Fairhaven and everything else for any time in our lifetimes, right?
So
I'm old, so.
In answer to the question, John, how many vacant lots are within 300 feet of what the sewer extension will be?
40 to 60, you said.
I think it was 60 to 100. I think it's 82.
So the struggle here is that right now those lots can't develop because they can't perk. I mean, you can't put a septic system in there to protect water quality. The concern is that putting a sewer there does make them now developable. But that's being balanced against the fact that this is within an area that's subject to sea level rise. We think there's an answer for that. And that's something we're really going to be working on as part of the update of the Humboldt Bay Area Plan, because the industrial area out there needs to be protected too. And in protecting that, coastal dependent industrial, you're going to end up protecting the residences at the same time. Then there's the tsunami question. And as John mentioned, we have not gotten good guidance yet from the Geological Society. That is forthcoming. It will be different than what has been applied before. And so that will be an appropriate time to take a fresh look at this.
Okay, I like hearing there's a time to look at it. Supervisor Madrone?
Director Ford, you said that the problem is that the site conditions are that they wouldn't perk. But isn't in fact the problem that they perk too quick because it's pure sand? So it's not a problem of perk, it's a problem of perking too quick. And in those conditions, one can bring in soils and build Wisconsin mounds that allow for proper percolation and treatment. I know out in Fieldbrook, there's such a high water table that literally any new home going in kind of Fieldbrook proper is pretty much putting in Wisconsin mounds, right? Because they got to get up above the water table. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify what the issue was. It's sand, perks too quick. Thank you.
That is the perking problem. That's correct, Supervisor Madrone.
And it fails perk.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah, it drains directly into groundwater.
So it fails perk. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm glad to know that there'll be a future further look. But with that, we have a recommendation for a motion to adopt the proposed Humboldt Bay Area Plan and Zoning Map Amendment and the included actions as discussed. Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you. Before I'll make a motion to move forward with this, but I just want to recognize that the state and state agencies and through the Coastal Commission have to, or are trying very hard to adapt to what is a changing landscape from a climate perspective and from a sea level rise perspective. And especially true with the disclosures that are required here, because what is trying to be avoided is unnecessary development in areas where we know that are likely to be prone to hazards, and then have those areas then when something happens, when the disaster, the inevitable occurs, or whether it's sea level rise comes or whatever it is, not whether, when it comes, that then the rest of the state, the public, isn't leaned upon with relationship to having to mitigate for that or deal with it because of the choices of the private property owners to move forward on those properties in these ways. And so there's just a balance trying to figure out a way to not have that happen, to adjust for that now as opposed to later. None of these plans are, I would say, perfect or universally loved, but that is the direction that is trying to be dealt with in this case, and will continue up and down the coast in terms of, especially when we're talking about new development. I don't think that this stops all development in this location. It does allow, especially is good because it does allow for those folks to get hooked up to sewer who need to be hooked up to sewer, so they're no longer in violation with relationship to water quality issues. And it does set a direction for some new development out in the peninsula, with that balance of disclosure, responsibility, and then also not putting people and property in harm's way unnecessarily for the future. So that's the balance that's being sought. Again, it's a continual push-pull between local and state governance on those issues, as who's to be responsible, both in the current and then in the future. So with that, I'm willing to make a motion to approve staff recommendations. And do I need to be specific about the resolution numbers and all that other stuff? So.
County Council Billingsley has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it would be staff recommendation, except for item 4A, would be to adopt the resolution that's attachment 5, if that's correct.
Okay, staff recommendation except for 4A, which is then taken away and we're putting in document 5. Is that the way we're doing that? Attachment 5.
It would be attachment 5 instead of attachment 1.
Yeah, instead of attachment 1, excuse me. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Well, I'll second it if nobody else will. I'm not sure where else we're going to go with this. So, I mean, not necessarily like it as much as I would like it to be a little different, but it is how it is, and we'll look in the future. So, unless someone wants that second, I'll take it. Okay, I second it because I can. Supervisor Bushnell, we didn't get to hear from you, and I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add. I didn't mean to forget you. You kind of flipped onto the other picture screen.
No, thank you, through Chair. I've just been listening.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second, and appears to be no more discussion. Nikki, can we have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Supervisor Bohn.
Sure.
Okay, Supervisor Wilson.
Yep.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
And Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
And I'd like to ask Director Ford if we can have some kind of updates occasionally on how it's looking for moving forward on those additions or changes to the Humboldt Bay area plan. Doesn't have to be today. I just wanted to put that on the radar. So we will now close that public hearing. And we're going to move to our next public hearing, which comes to us from Public Works. And it's regarding the public hearing of the Humboldt County Groundwater Sustainability Agency and consideration of the adoption of groundwater sustainability plan and the whole explanation. But at this time, I heard someone talking. Supervisor Bushnell, you to put your mute on, please. Sorry. So this time we're going to adjourn as the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors and convene as the governing board of the Humboldt County Groundwater Sustainability Agency and consider the agenda which is on our packet. I do open the public hearing and then may we have roll call, please? I guess that's you, Hank.
Here.
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Until we get in the chambers, we're kind of stuck with this.
Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn.
Yep.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yep.
And now we can go to public comment on non-agenda items.
Yes, we will. And I'd like to let folks know this public comment on non-agenda items is only about items that are under the jurisdiction of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So if you are wanting to make a public comment of something that is under the jurisdiction of this agency, this would be the time for just general public comment. So 8859, if you wanted to just make general public comment on this, what's under the purview of this agency, this would be your time. Press *6 to unmute.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor Bass. I wanted to make a comment about the final groundwater sustainability plan. Is this the right moment or should I wait?
No, you can wait that because we're going to be discussing that, I believe. Correct, Hank? Is that
okay?
I think that's one. So yeah, we'll be there shortly. I see no other hands up. Right, so we'll move on to the actual agenda items. And of course, it's the public hearing regarding the adoption. I think I opened the public hearing already, but if I didn't, I just did now. And Hank, I'd like to go to you for a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Hank Seaman, Deputy Director for Public Works. This item involves the proposed adoption of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan for the Eel River Valley Groundwater Basin. Preparation of this plan is required by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and it's due to be submitted by January 31st. If approved, this plan will go to the California Department of Water Resources for review. We had an in-depth discussion of the draft plan on January 4th, so today's staff report will be brief. Sustainability, or the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act is based around 6 sustainability indicators, and our analysis of those indicators concluded that this basin is being managed sustainably. And the results of this analysis are specific to the basin and not transferable to other locations. Probably the biggest question was whether groundwater pumping affects the beneficial uses of interconnected surface waters. We developed a computer model that represents the groundwater aquifer and also the lower Eel and lower Van Dusen rivers. We used the model to look at the effects of pumping on the lower Eel and the lower Van Dusen. The analysis focused on conditions that would allow passage of adult salmon and steelhead. And we concluded that pumping volumes could increase before the effects would potentially have a significant and unreasonable effect. In the draft report, we estimated that the pumping volumes could increase up to 150% before those effects could be significant. After further review, we reduced that hypothetical pumping increase to 100%. And so that's the basis for the estimate of sustainable yield in the plan. During the discussion on January 4th, we heard feedback from board members about the value of watershed projects that would benefit the Eel River and the Van Dusen in terms of flows coming into the groundwater basin. So that point was emphasized in the plan. We also heard feedback about the value of managing gravel deposits in the river channel and performing in-stream habitat restoration. Both of those approaches at the staff level, we agree would be a better investment of time and effort and much more likely to be effective than considering limitations on pumping in the basin. And this conclusion is based on the best available science and the best available information, and it's specific to this basin. The Eel River Valley is really unique because it's located at the bottom of this vast watershed. It has really favorable recharge and climatic conditions, and just the size and characteristics of the aquifer are unique. The county will need to conduct periodic monitoring and reporting, which we will attempt to do by fitting that within our water management budget. That budget unit also supports our work on other water resource related issues. The Department of Water Resources will publish our submitted groundwater sustainability plan for public review, and then they have up to 2 years to do their review and determination. And then we'll need to do an update in 5 years based on any new additional data and information. So our recommendation is that the board adopt the attached resolution adopting the groundwater sustainability plan for the Eel River Valley groundwater basin. And then when you reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, we recommend that you approve the attached contract amendment with our prime consultant that assisted in developing this plan. That ends the staff report.
All right, thank you, Hank. Any questions for Hank before we go to public comment? Supervisor Madrone.
I just wanted to commend Deputy Director Seaman, his consultants and staff for all their hard work on this and being really responsive to the comments that came in at our last meeting on this discussion, including really looking at broad watershed efforts that might add to surface water flows. So I wanted to thank you, Deputy Director Seaman, for being so responsive to the input that you received. Great effort.
Thank you. Supervisor Bohn.
So, Hank, and did I understand that right? So we would have to double the historical pumping levels to have any effect on the rivers and groundwater? Is that what you're saying?
The plan does an analysis for passage of adult salmon and steelhead, and then use that's the basis for assessing when would the pumping have a significant and unreasonable effect. And we concluded that yes, hypothetically, it would have to increase 100% before effects on adult fish passage would be a concern.
And I didn't fully understand, why did we go from 150 to 100? Because some of the guys are telling me, because as you well know, historically, we will probably never pump in the levels that we pumped historically, as we tend to lose more dairies and some of the land is being repurposed at certain levels. Not a lot, but it's getting repurposed at certain levels for other institutions. So why did we go from 150 to 100? Was that just political pressure, or was that actually scientific pressure? Or like you said, like we do a lot of stuff, that's just what we think is going to happen?
I mentioned that there are 6 sustainability indicators. There's one for groundwater levels, one for storage, one for seawater intrusion. And so we took the conclusion about the effects on interconnected surface water, and we had to circle back and look at the metrics that we developed for water levels. And those metrics were initially developed to ensure that domestic wells are protected and don't go dry or aren't threatened to go dry. And some of those metrics would potentially cross over a threshold at that 150% increase level. And so we throttled it back to 100% to make sure that those metrics for water levels are not affected. So that was the sole basis for that adjustment.
Just basically bulletproofed it. Thanks, Hank. Good job.
Supervisor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Just a couple questions. And with relationship to passage, I think, you have this modeling. What about and just a couple other things, like fish passage can change based on not just flow in the rivers, but then also the, the gravel elevations. And so do we modify this plan if gravel elevations change significantly with relationship to its impact on flow? That's my first question. The second one is water quality. I'm just wondering if modeling was done with relationship to potential impacts for water quality based on this pumping. So those are my two questions.
Sure. So on the first question, it's definitely true that the conditions in the channel, I'll call them the geomorphic conditions, change year to year in terms of where the riffles are located, the sequence of pools and riffles, and that really has a big effect on habitat conditions. And that's not affected at all by groundwater pumping. And the modeling that we did, I would say, is the larger scale. So we're looking at monthly averages. We're looking at more of a big picture water balance. And so it's not sensitive to the year-to-year changing conditions. And then regarding water quality, this is the one sustainability indicator where where there's existing programs that monitor and regulate for water quality. And SGMA doesn't require us to duplicate or expand into existing programs. So our sole focus as a GSA is where actions of the GSA might affect groundwater. And so our focus is really on, we identify that there is naturally occurring arsenic in certain areas of the aquifer, especially in the lower layer. And so our plan includes keeping an eye on that, but we're actually relying on water sampling that the municipal water providers are already doing. And it's just to make sure that arsenic stays below the drinking water standards. In terms of modeling, the modeling indicated that it would take increases of hypothetically 4 to 5 times what we have currently before there would be significant changes in groundwater direction and flow. And so in terms of, moving impacted groundwater, so the conclusion was that groundwater pumping was not going to cause significant effects on water quality.
All right, thanks.
And Deputy Director Seaman, I see Jack Rice is on. Is he on as a member of a committee of yours, or is he on for public comment?
Jack's part of the team and he's available to respond to any questions.
Sorry, Jack, I didn't want you to think you're being ignored. I had to make sure what capacity you're in. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'll just be available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any for you yet, so we'll come back. So at this time, we will open the public hearing portion. 8859 did have your hand up and it's down now, but if you wanted to comment, oh, there you are, you're back. Okay, good. 8859, we'll go to you for this first comment, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Chair Bass. My name is Alicia Heyman. I'm the Executive Director for Friends of the Eel River. Thanks for the opportunity to comment today on the county's groundwater sustainability plan. Humboldt County has dual responsibilities in managing our groundwater. The county must comply with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, but it also is responsible for protecting public trust interests in groundwater. And unfortunately, Friends of the Eel River believes that this groundwater sustainability plan accomplishes neither. As the National Marine Fisheries Service pointedly wrote in their comments in the draft plan, and I'm just going to quote from their comments here, they say, "It does not appear that the draft GSP will achieve sustainable groundwater management in the Eel River Valley within the next 20 years, and groundwater use will continue to have negative effects on the viability of listed species and the greater ecosystem in general." So I would suggest that if, or possibly when, the Department of Water Resources rejects this plan, it would be an opportunity for the board to develop meaningful regulatory mechanisms for groundwater use. We really need a plan that protects our natural resources and the various beneficial uses of surface water flows, which can be affected by groundwater withdrawal. So a meaningful plan would mean correcting modeling methods or monitoring methods and modeling in the ways described by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which would allow an accurate portrayal of the connection between surface flows and groundwater use. It would also mean developing minimum thresholds for depletion of surface water flows that are based on optimum flows for all life stages of salmon and steelhead in the basin. And finally, any meaningful groundwater regulation needs to include regulatory and enforcement mechanisms that will restrict groundwater use when necessary to protect public trust resources, which we all have a responsibility to pass on to future generations. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Next, we are going to go to 4555. If that's you, press *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. All right, 4555, just press *6. There you go. Welcome.
Hi. My name's Scott Greason. I'm the Conservation Director with Friends of the Eel River. Thanks for your attention today. What do we mean when we say Humboldt County has a duty to protect public trust values that can be affected by groundwater extraction? The idea of public trust is rooted in ancient Roman law. Some things by their nature cannot be privately owned. Flowing waters, the ocean shore, wild animals. The California Supreme Court's 1983 ruling in the Mono Lake case affirmed that the state stands as the trustee of these public things and the benefits they provide. Just as a financial trustee has a fiduciary duty to protect the assets under their care, government has an affirmative duty to safeguard these public assets to ensure their benefits will continue to be available to the public. A Siskiyou County court held that the public trust doctrine applies to groundwater extraction that can affect beneficial uses of connected surface waters. In that case, salmon in the Scott River. Upholding that ruling in a 2018 ruling that the state Supreme Court declined to review, the California Court of Appeals also held Siskiyou County's duty to protect the public trust in groundwater was not fulfilled by its implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. To quote the Court of Appeals, in the county's view, it never had and continues not to have any fiduciary duties involving groundwater. Not so. The county, as a subdivision of the state, shares responsibility for administering the public trust and may not approve of destructive activities without giving due regard to the preservation of those resources. Unquote. In the lower Eel River Valley, the water tapped by wells and pumps is connected to the water flowing down the Eel River. In 2014, we saw the lower Eel run completely dry below Fortuna. As the expert agencies have now informed your board, the model and analysis relied on by the draft groundwater sustainability plan do not support the county's claim that groundwater extraction cannot affect salmon and steelhead in the lower Eel River. Thus, to uphold its duty to protect fish and wildlife native to the Eel River, including species listed under state and federal Endangered Species Acts, the county must give due regard to the impacts of groundwater extraction.
You still have 30 seconds, Scott.
Thank you. On those public trust resources, the groundwater sustainability plan does not provide an adequate basis for such an analysis. Thanks for your attention.
All right, thank you, Scott. All right, we'll go to 2214. If you're 2214, press *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, good morning. My name is Melissa Lima. I'm the field representative for Western United Dairies here on the North Coast, also a native of the Eel River Valley. And I'm speaking today as a representative of 32 dairies located within the Eel River Basin. First, it has been our pleasure to work with stakeholders throughout this past 5 years in creation of the Eel River Basin Groundwater Sustainability Act. We applaud Deputy Director Seaman and his staff and consultants for their work and dedication to creating a GSP that does recognize the unique and essential resource that the Eel River Basin is to this valley, and Also, their dedication to taking a really critical look at the resource that is the Eel River. The combination of 60 plus years of historical record regarding groundwater levels combined with real-time groundwater data collection over the past 5 years do show that our basin has had a stable and thus far sustainable cycle of groundwater use since record keeping began in the 1950s. And even in years of extreme drought, we are clearly managing our basin in a way that's protective of not only the groundwater elevations, but the quality of water in our aquifers. There's been significant discussion about the uses of water in the basin with a highlight on our agriculture community and the pumping that takes place primarily in the summer and fall. Very little of that discussion has been supported by the data discovery during the creation of the GSP. So I'd just like to add a few notes on the use of water for agriculture. Ag producers have and continue to improve irrigation efficiencies based on new technology and are quick to implement needed change based on a variety of factors, including weather conditions, labor, time of use regulations, available equipment, and conditions that exist on the ground. The use of groundwater as a resource for ag production allows for the protection of open space, preservation of important wildlife corridors, rehabilitation of habitats, and in some cases provides for groundwater recharge in summer months when it may not otherwise occur. And I would caution that asking users to cut back or change cultural practices, whether during drought or for other reasons, without data that supports those cutbacks probably doesn't make sense and could have significant economic impact on farms and ranches with very little positive impact on the health of our groundwater basin or the Eel River itself based on all the data that's been collected and looked at. So a final point, dairy farmers know that our job as stewards of this unique environment is never done. They continue to work to preserve the parts of this unique valley that they're caretakers for. And the passage of this groundwater sustainability plan will allow them to continue to do so in a way that's not only environmentally sustainable, but allows their livelihoods to be economically sustainable for future generations. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right, thank you. Next commenter is 0116. I believe that's you, Ash. Welcome.
Hello, yeah, I just had a quick comment. I mean, from what I was hearing, it's like the groundwater use itself is like it's gonna have to double to actually have any real impact. And like the arsenic testing is being handled by someone else also. So there's like not a real chance of there being enough water drawn to actually have a real impact. And someone else is doing the arsenic testing. So what is the program actually doing that's not like, that's really necessary, and how much money is being spent on it? That's just my question. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ash. And then the last hand up at this point is a 0151. I think that might be Dottie. Welcome.
Hi, so I'm coming from, this is Dottie Russell from Southern Humboldt. So I'm coming from the Eel River Valley in Southern Humboldt, and I'm not a specialist. So that's not what I know best. But what I do know is that the whole issue with the water and the use and the farming and the sustainability and the stewardship and the cannabis is all confusing and screwed up. So I don't even know where to begin, except for John Laboito has said that this soil on the floodplain is like the best soil there is in Humboldt County. And then some people get a cannabis permit and the very next person says they can't have a cannabis permit for whatever reason. I have no clue, but I'm not a cannabis grower and I'm not a vegetable grower, but it makes sense that if it's the best soil that you use it. I heard when there was the Mateel meeting about legalizing that there was a place maybe in Laytonville that had cannabis and food, and that it seemed to make some sense. It sounded like it made good sense to me as well. So and then you add on top of it that the code enforcement people are now saying nobody is allowed to live on the floodplain where this great soil is, but nobody's supposed to use it. But then if you use it for growing, then that's sustainability. And then you can't have a container on the property that can be used to store your agricultural stuff. Makes no sense to me. You can't have a tiny house, but what, you're just going to have a big field of stuff and nobody can live there? And everybody that's living currently that's had a permit and living in a trailer for the last 40 years is now going to get code enforcement. I really wish that you could set up something and let us know what's going on and how to make some sense of this, because as an educator myself, I look at this and just say, I haven't seen anything that's a bigger mess than this, even in a classroom. So I'd love somebody to explain it to me. So since I'm asking for it, I'm going to ask that somebody come down to Southern Humboldt. Let's have a meeting on the floodplain, right on the Avenue of the Giants. Let's talk about it and make some sense, because there's nobody down here that understands or can make any sense of this. Thank you.
Thank you. No hands are up, so we'll go back to the board and Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Hank, can you explain the area, please? Just broadly where it's encompassing.
Yes, we're talking about the groundwater basin that extends through Ferndale, Lolita, Fortuna, Carlotta and Hydesville, and then up to Rio Dell and Scotia. And that boundary is defined by the state, and that specifies where this groundwater plan applies.
So just to the caller before, this isn't about Southern Humboldt's area.
Correct.
Thank you. And then also for the caller before that, can you just briefly, very briefly explain why we're doing this and how come we have to?
Yeah, we're doing this because it's a mandatory requirement from state law. And if the county did not form a groundwater agency and develop this plan, then the state water board would likely have intervened. And part of that intervention would likely include fees on water users.
Thank you for that. Also to you and your team, thank you for all your guys' hard work. And it's been a long process. And you caught me up very quickly coming into it late in the game, and I really appreciate it.
Supervisor Wilson?
You, Chair Bass. Hank, there was a couple of comments from Friends of the Eel that I want to focus on for a second. One is they were speaking to impacts beyond passage related to fish, like other life cycle stages that might be impacted, and asking whether that was a parameter that was evaluated. And then there was a concern that the Department of Water Resources may not approve of our plan. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts as to whether or not that is a reasonable prediction and what we might expect.
Sure.
In the process.
So on the first point, we looked at, we're required under SGMA to look at consider the beneficial uses of interconnected surface water. And there's no question that the lower Eel, the lower Van Dusen are interconnected with the aquifer. And we need to assess, are groundwater conditions causing significant and unreasonable impacts to those beneficial uses? And so we certainly looked at the presence of fish, salmon and steelhead, and in the summer and in the late summer when conditions are dry, juvenile salmonids are really not in the lower Eel and the lower Van Dusen, due primarily to water temperature. And so that's the period, which has the highest concern because of the low flows. So we focused on adult passage, which could become a factor in September, which is still during the irrigation season. And that part of the reason we focus on fish passage is that there's a framework to look at fish passage in terms of minimum water depths fish passage. I think one of the issues we have here is that the groundwater law sigma focuses on the results of groundwater use. And that, so the term is undesirable results. Some people look at the lower rivers and they see conditions that are not optimal or not favorable for fish, which is true, but we did not find evidence that those conditions were directly caused by groundwater use. And so it's not the mandate of the groundwater agency to fix conditions that there's not strong evidence that they're being caused by groundwater use. And so that really comes back to the feedback we got from the board when we talked about the draft plan, was the value of focusing on other actions, beneficial actions to the watershed and the basin that could improve conditions for salmon, rather than continuing to try to think about curtailing pumping in this basin.
And as a follow-up to that, Hank, with relationship to what is considered significant impact by one particular use, I mean, we know there is a problem, right? We see it in that watershed. We see it in the river morphology that moves through the basin, that there is a problem. I mean, no one's denying that. And if it's an aggregation of a lot of different impacts, both past and current, then maybe groundwater pumping isn't by itself a significant impact, but in aggregate with others. I mean, that's I guess maybe one might have that perspective, which is that, okay, that might be true. It by itself, it doesn't have an impact, but it could have an impact, as a part of these all these other impacts that are coming together. So, and then, so I can understand where there would be concern with relationship to that, but then also in the estuarine systems that we're working on, Salt River and all these other places, beyond just the river system itself, these systems and the future of those systems in terms of the estuarine habitat that's also providing refugia for these species, was that considered in this review?
The segments of the lower Eel and the lower Salt River that are affected by tides and seawater, the hydrology there is really dominated by the tides and not affected by pumping. There is a segment of the Salt River and other tributaries that are outside of tidal effects. The Salt River is interesting because it's a heavily disturbed system, and with sedimentation, other alterations, and the Humboldt County RCD has led this, over 20-year effort to restore the Salt River, get it back to being functional. So it's a system that's really being in a state of flux, and so it's really a moving condition, a moving target. And the model that we developed was not at a scale that could predict flows in the Salt River, and we also don't have flow measurements to calibrate the model. So that would be a data gap that we could consider in the future when we look at updating the plan.
And just as a follow-up, I mean, again, there was a prediction that the Regional Water Quality Control, the Department of Water Resources might have some concerns about this. And I was just wondering, do you predict that there will be concerns from the Department of Water Resources?
Sigma establishes, and it's worth repeating, Sigma establishes very firmly that groundwater should be managed for multiple beneficial uses. And so that's really the charge of the groundwater agency. Some of the comments we received are very single focused, but it's really the agency's mandate to balance beneficial uses And then Sigma also establishes that, or states that groundwater is best managed locally in accordance with groundwater plans and best available science. And so I don't foresee that Department of Water Resources will second guess our conclusions. I think they'll look more at the process and whether we have all the elements of a plan, but presumably they'll follow that policy that defers to the discretion of local agencies. Jack, do you want to amend that or supplement that response?
I think that's correct. The Department of Water Resources looks at the technical work that went into answering some very challenging questions. So there's a technical component and a policy component. In the Eel River Basin, it's been a very challenging and required a lot of work and more work than I've seen in other basins about this question of stream flow. There's been a lot of work put into that. So that technical side seems very strong, and the policy position, the policy aspects of that, of balancing those uses, is reasonable. And so that combination is what we've seen the Department of Water Resources look at in their review. And they have accepted, we only have seen what they've done with the critically overdrafted basins. They had much different questions they're trying to answer. We haven't seen what they've done going forward, but their substantial compliance standard is as much work has been done. It is hard for me, at least in the other GSPs I've worked on, to imagine that it would find significant flaws with this water sustainability plan.
All right. Thank you, Hank, and thank you, Jack, for your responses. Thanks.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you through the chair, Jack or Hank. This program was put together with guidelines that were suggested from them, or can you let people know? Like the pumping, we did the monitoring wells and that type of thing.
Yeah, the Sigma law contains a lot of requirements for the elements of the plan. And there's a standard practice for developing a computer model that's really a necessary tool. And so we applied those methods and practices.
So to Supervisor Wilson's question or statement about the flows, according to the groundwater investigations that we needed to do with the monitoring wells, we did not find that the pumping of those wells, or that the connection between the wells and the flows, they did not connect significantly. Is that a correct statement?
If I could restate the statement.
Yeah, please.
So groundwater in the aquifer, and then the surface water in the lower Eel and Van Dusen are connected. And it's really an amazing system. I mean, in the winter, the surface flows are in part, they're replenishing the aquifer. That's part of the reason that the groundwater levels stay so stable. And then there's other times of the year where groundwater actually feeds into the surface waters. So it goes back and forth. We developed criteria to assess whether groundwater use is having a significant and unreasonable impact on the beneficial uses of those surface waters. So it's a very structured regulatory question that we're trying to answer. So it's not a, is there effect question, it's, is there significant and unreasonable effect?
So let me change the question a little bit. In August, this last year, when the eel at Ferndale went under and was very low, is there any thought process to whether the pumping of those wells, if it had completely stopped, would it have changed the would it have brought the river up, or would it have you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that's the really key question. Is there evidence that reduction of pumping would result in significantly higher in-stream flows at critical times of the year. And we just don't have that evidence. And some of the entities who commented on our draft plan made claims about that, but they didn't provide evidence. And so, we're relying on the best available science and information. And it's a complicated system because of the depth of the sediment in the river channel. And so you can have flow that goes subsurface and then emerges. And that's largely based on the sequence of pools and riffles.
Yeah.
So like you'll see lower flows at the head of the riffle, but then it can come out at the bottom of the riffle.
Thank you for that. And I know at the last discussion, we had talked about gravel levels, gravel pack levels, and how that's changed over the years. So thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
All right. Do you have any more questions for staff? And if not, we do have the attached resolution that's being recommended for adoption. Adopting the groundwater sustainability plan for the Eel River Valley groundwater basin. So that is attached. Is there anyone wanting to make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Bushnell. Supervisor Wilson?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm not going to second the motion, but I probably will end up voting for it. I just wanted to.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if there's a second person. We'll
All
be
right.
right with you. Is there a second to the motion? There's no second to the motion? All right, well.
Second the motion.
Thank you. I was gonna say we could go back and consider. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a reluctant second, but we're here. Thank you very much for doing that. Supervisor Wilson?
Sorry, lost my mouse there for a minute. I do want to speak to, I do see this as a plan that I'm hoping is adaptable to future and better information. As was mentioned by Hank, there are some gaps related to modeling that we could be doing with relationship to some of the tribs, especially in the lower basin, and some of the impacts that we could be seeing from there. And we don't have the data. And I think we do need to look at that, and I'm hoping that we'll get there. And so this is my way of sort of requesting that we have an open, or we actually, really look to derive that information, and then also be open to new information as it comes in. I know we just have a problem in the lower basin, and there are straws, and they are coming from everywhere, up in the upper basin and in the lower basin, and land use, and of course, historical impacts with relationship to the gravel that's kind of moving through the system, and we recognizing all of those. I just don't want this to be an excuse to do nothing in the future with relationship to how we move forward. And I did hear from the dairy farmer representative in their constant quest to be more efficient and to do better. And of course they are, because wasting water is wasting energy, is wasting money, right? And so we get there's no value to wasting water in any of these systems, and we need to do what we can to help bring those efficiencies. So with that, I'm ready to move forward with this, but I do want to recognize that I do think there are some significant criticisms that we need to address as we move forward on these issues. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Wilson. I see head nods from Supervisor Madrone. Must be similar feelings. Did you want to add anything, Supervisor Madrone? No? Okay. Seeing no other hands up, and Nikki's popped on the screen. I think we're ready for a roll call vote on the attached resolution.
Okay, Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn.
He said no.
He said no.
It's hard to say.
No, we shouldn't be here in the first place.
Thank you. And Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
Right, so we're going to close that public hearing, and we're joining as the governing board of the Humboldt County Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and we're reconvening as the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors. And we have an additional duty under this item the choice is to approve and authorize the Public Works Director to execute the attached First Amendment to the professional agreement and services. So I don't know if we want more discussion on that. Do we want to ask Hank for more clarification? It seems like it's just the next part of this. Hank, anything you want to, Supervisor Bohn?
Yeah, Hank, I noticed the original contract was $1,450,000, and I noticed it's up 15%. And I noticed that they said they had a $15,000 problem with one ground well. But can you tell me why it's up 15%?
This has been a really big enterprise, and SGMA's a new law. And so it's taken a lot of effort to develop our methods, develop our analysis, develop our technical memos. We were also envisioning collaborating with the U.S. Geological Survey because they had done some previous work on the basin. And in fact, we had a collaborative agreement with them, and there was going to be some fund transfer through our state grant funds. But the USGS wasn't able to participate fully due to staffing limitations. And so we've had some funding savings on that side that we can use to supplement the consultant's budget. And the consultant has done some of the work that the USGS would have otherwise done. So it's been very dynamic. But with this contract amendment, there'll be no net increase in the project budget because we have savings in other phases.
Okay, and this has already been spent, right? Are you telling me this is already, because this is from the 20th or so this money's already been spent. We're just adding 15% to it, right?
We're adjusting the amount to match their expenditures.
We can do that in private enterprise, but okay, I understand.
Thank you. I do have a question for County Council Billingsley. Because we adjourned as one group and we reconvened as the Board of Supervisors for this action, do we need to go back for a separate public comment? It didn't, I don't think it said it on the agenda. Maybe it did, but I just want to confirm.
Chair, that's probably prudent.
Okay. I love going out to public comment anyway. You never know. Here's some good ideas. All right, so there's another opportunity. The item we're talking about at the moment is to approve and authorize the Public Works Director to execute the attached First Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with GHD. So I guess the thing anyone would want to talk to from the public would be whether they think that's prudent or not. I don't know if there's a lot to talk about. So we will go to the public, and this is a little more defined item. If there's any hands up. I don't see any. Okay, we'll go back to the board. So Supervisor Madrone.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to do here. You know, down the road, I'm supportive of this work that's been done at this point. Very much appreciate the way it was expanded to include the whole watershed. And I really think that's going to aid in our efforts with the two basin solutions on the Eel River and the Potter Valley project. In regards to part of the solution ultimately being significant federal funding coming down to help decommission really bad eroding roads that are dumping excess sediment in the system, while also performing extensive forest health projects of thinning, light thinning from below, not necessarily clear cutting. But all of those things can aid the hydrology and the groundwater recharge and things. So I think this is helping set the stage for hopefully being able to get significant funding to do a lot of that work throughout the watershed that will ultimately aid with water in the lower basin in the Ferndale, Fortuna area. So I'm grateful that the plan's been expanded that way. And in my work, this is kind of how that works. Once you've got something in a plan like that, you can then request funding, which will create jobs and get a lot of other good work done in the watershed. So really glad that that's happened.
Great, thank you. Sorry to ask this. I'm hungry, I think. Did we get a motion on that? This second item? No, okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure, because we need one now, if there is a will to approve and authorize the Public Works Director to adjust that agreement with GHD.
I'll make that motion and also add on the request for the Public Works Director, yes, to execute it as well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second. Thank you, Hank, for your thorough reports as always. It's good. And the good questions. So Nikki, can we have a roll call, please?
Oh, you bet. Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes. Yes.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn. Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah.
Is that a yes or a no?
So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, so a different one this morning. So we could try to push through at the closed session, but I think we should just take lunch until our 1 o'clock time set. Sorry, Supervisor Bohn. And besides that, folks who are wanting to make public comment on non-agenda items, I've been told it won't be before, right before closed session. So I just wanted to let them know we're going to have an item start at 1 o'clock. And so I'd be on this Zoom again by 1 o'clock, hoping, I don't know how long that item will take, but just saying that they can take a brief lunch as well if they'd like to do that and come back in just a bit. We'll be back at 1 o'clock. Property located at 6608 3rd Street in Fields Landing, APN number 306-016-002. So at this time, I'm opening the cost recovery hearing, and I'd like to hand this to Director Ford to hand it to whomever is doing the report.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the members of the Board of Supervisors. John Ford. Joining me is Karen Manel and Christine Warner to present a cost recovery hearing related to an abatement undertaken on 3rd Street in Fields Landing. Ms. Warner and Ms. Manel will give a more thorough presentation than I will. I just want to say that this is an abatement that was done completely within the procedures outlined in county code. County staff attempted to work with the property owner to resolve the violation and remove the junk from the site and remove the substandard housing, but was unsuccessful in working with the property owner to do that. And so the county undertook the abatement. The property owner is appealing the assessment against the property for the cost of the cleanup. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Manel now to present the specifics of this case.
Well, thank you, Director Ford. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And while I get that prepared, I will just introduce myself. I am Karen Manel, the Code Enforcement Manager for the County of Humboldt. And before your board today is this nuisance abatement hearing. Your board is being asked to approve an assessment of $49,318 in order for the county to recover the costs incurred with performing an abatement of the nuisances on this property. The property owner appealed our notice of assessment, which is placing this item before your board. The property in question is located in Fields Landing on C and 3rd Streets. This case began in at the end of 2020 in response to numerous citizen complaints regarding the conditions on the property. The violations found on the property were numerous. There were unpermitted modifications to the residence, rendering it unsafe. There was an accumulation of solid waste, junk vehicles, unsanitary conditions. And in December of 2020, the building division posted a notice and order of substandard housing and also an unsafe to enter or occupy notice. The conditions continue to deteriorate. Some of the debris spilled out into the street. And in March of 2021, our department issued a notice to abate nuisance and a notice of violation and administrative civil penalty, or an NOV. There was no appeal requested for either one of those. Over the next couple months, very little progress was made on by the property owner to abate the nuisances, and we continued to receive numerous complaints. So in June, we got an inspection warrant and served that with representatives from multiple agencies and also with a contractor, because we were preparing to perform a county abatement and we needed that contractor to give us an estimate. So following that inspection, we entered into an agreement for those abatement services with Walland Construction. This structure was previously determined to be unsafe, but I wanted to demonstrate that to you. This photo shows the foundation area that is being propped up by miscellaneous cinder blocks and wood and metal beams. And then here is another corner of the building that looks like it's being held up what appears to be a log. And so these were some of the conditions that were noted that rendered the building unsafe. The property owner had also dug out the entire foundation of the residence, which had filled in with water due to the high water table. And the result was something of a moat around the residence, which was also complemented by a working drawbridge where you can see the dog there. So we did get an inspection warrant and an order of abatement from Humboldt County Superior Court, and we began the abatement on July 7th, 2021. These are pictures from the interior of the residence. When we entered the residence, the shower was still wet and the wood stove was very warm, which is indicating people were occupying the structure despite the notices posted by the building division. The scope of the work for the abatement included demolition of the structure, removal of the solid waste, and recontouring the site to natural grade. It also included disconnecting utilities, capping the sewer line, and installing erosion control measures. The contractor completed that abatement at the end of July, so it took a little less than 20 days. The cost of the abatement was $49,318, which includes $4,680 in administrative costs. We issued the notice of nuisance abatement assessment, and we served that on the property owner. He requested an appeal within the timeframes that are given to him. So these next pictures are of after the abatement was completed. So the property owner did appeal that assessment, and that's why the matter is before your board. The nature of the appeal indicated that Mr. Bodie thought there was value associated with the items that were removed from his property. The property owner, however, had over 2 months to show any kind of improvement to the condition and avoid county stepping in to perform an abatement. But over those 2 months, the conditions worsened and the complaints continued to come in. I would like to note that the NOV that we also served along with the NTA, it accrued for 90 days, and the total for that NOV would have been $139,500. However, we're not seeking those, and those are not included in this assessment. So at this point, there is no rational basis for a reduction or elimination of the proposed assessment because it's based only on the expenses already paid. So upon approval of the assessment, the next step is to serve a nuisance abatement lien, which will give the owner 45 days to pay. And if not, then that lien would be recorded against the property. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Karen, thank you. Did you say it could have been as much as 139,000 plus, and it's only 49,000 versus that, correct? It could have been that high is what I'm trying to say.
Correct. The penalties would have accrued to 139,500, but we're not seeking the penalties because we performed the county abatement, and really we're just looking to recover the cost that we paid out. Go ahead.
I think Supervisor Bohn has a question.
Yeah, and yeah, there were lots of complaints, and I'm having a hard time with this because Luke was going through a pretty tough time, and he's had some issues. His dad's passed away and things like that a few years ago. But with that being said, I noticed the mini excavator was gone, and there were a couple items that looked like had been removed before you did the abatement, because I noticed the mini X. So we didn't take the mini excavator. I don't see or anything like that. So he was aware that some things needed to be taken off the property. I would venture to say.
Through the chair, I would say he was aware, although he himself was not available. There were many people on site trying to grab whatever they could right up until the time that we showed up with the contractor.
Karen, I have a question. Do we know if those people were just random people showing up, taking things from the site?
I don't know their relationship to the property owner. They seemed to know one of the occupants of the site. I don't know.
Okay. But things were just left out, so.
Well, and I know the property is listed for sale now for $75,000, I believe. So I don't think but I did notice that listing.
And Christine, set your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Bass. I believe that Luke's girlfriend, Katie, had requested from a lot of their mutual friends assistance in removing items from the property. So she was familiar with the people that were coming. And at one point, I believe she may have posted an ad. I'm not sure where, if it was on Craigslist or what, for basically a yard sale. And that brought a lot of strangers to the site that took items that they paid for. So she was trying to raise money, and the mini excavator was not taken by the county. It was removed prior to the abatement, and it was left parked on the street. And after that, I'm not sure where it went.
There was also, I think, a skid steer. Wasn't there a skid steer also, or not?
I believe there was a skid steer as well.
And Katie is in contrast to Kate, his sister, who's working with him now on this letter and stuff, right?
Correct. It's not the same. It is not the same person.
Yeah. We don't have a program, so I thought I'd let everybody know the players.
Any other supervisors have a question or comment?
And now,
Rex?
Clarification. We will not get this money till the property is sold, or how many years down the line till we foreclose on it? Is that my understanding?
Through the chair, we will put this lien and record it against the property, and at the same time, we can ask the auditor to make this an assessment on the tax rolls. So when those so it'll be showing up as a just like a regular property tax bill would show up, and after 3 years of delinquency, then that foreclosure process and auction can take place. So it's either to answer your question, it's either when the property sells or 3 years, whichever is longer.
And he has the option to wait to get stuff in line till then. Okay.
Well, let's see any questions. Sorry, lost my little thing of participants here. We do have one person from the public that wanted to chime in. And that's, I believe it's Dottie 0151. There you go.
Hello, thank you. So this is Dottie Russell. As we all know, that we had an abatement that was shocking in Southern Humboldt of the Christian Science Church. So since that has been happening, there have been a number of things that I think should be addressed. One is, if there was a mini excavator there, one would assume they didn't have it for a recreational vehicle to play on. I mean, The reason why I'm saying it like that is because when people try to make a difference and they try to do something, it's not honored and it's not respected that they put effort into doing something. So if they try, but then something goes backwards or something else happens, or something goes on with their life, or a death or COVID, it gets really complicated. So I think that it should really be, maybe there should be a way that instead of just victimizing people that have a problem, that we actually get a committee together, and maybe Adult Protective Services, they actually do work with some people that that handle these potential problems to a certain degree, especially trash. So for us, we were caught completely off guard. We were completely caught off guard, had no idea, traumatized the community. And I think you need people that aren't supervisors and aren't planning department to be able to go and, just assign somebody that's willing to be a good Samaritan from a church or community center that can go out and say, okay, what progress are you making? At least you would know that there's progress. I mean, they wouldn't have an excavator there to make no progress. And so, and then during the COVID too, things are much more difficult. Probably finances are more difficult. Family members and death and everything is way more difficult. I think that we need to address this in a different way. So as far as notice, I mean, if you're gonna pursue the abatement, I'm getting ready to steal your stuff, then there needs to be some kind of understanding. What does that mean? He will help you get a demo permit that then will give you, once you get the permit, then you'll have 2 months to remove whatever you want to remove, and then we'll take what's left. I mean, there's a humane way to handle people that are in crisis. And most of the people that I've heard about that have gotten abatements and then the cost recovery and stuff are in crisis. And they're more in crisis now, and now their whole families are in crisis. And on top of it,
Dottie, I appreciate you calling in. Hey, just hold on a moment.
I'm just
Supervisor Bohn, is there anyone else? I don't see any more hands up in the queue, so let's go back to the board. Supervisor Bohn.
back to the church in Garberville. I don't know where that came up, but I want to applaud the staff on how long they took to do that and how many complaints I got on that church. And if Dolly didn't know about it, I can't fix that. And as far as Luke goes, the mini excavator he's a contractor, or was a contractor, and I think he wants to get back into it after he gets through this little downplay. But Christine, you didn't show up on Tuesday and tear it down on Wednesday. There was a pretty long gap of, I think, from the first complaint till we actually put somebody in there, of 18 months, 20 months, 22 months. And I think they tried to work with everybody involved. But as you're working with everybody involved, he had 6 neighbors. And I probably made 40 visits to the site to meet with neighbors, or to go take pictures, and would send my pictures. And I think I got it to the point where Karen was so upset that she didn't want to get the pictures anymore, because I'm going, what the hell are we doing? Because the people that were in crisis were the 7 neighbors, because it wasn't Luke as much as, just like he said, there were a lot of people staying at that house, around that house, and the motorhomes they were pulling up next to it. It got to be quite a situation, and Fields Landing is trying to clean up as much as possible. There's a couple other places, but they're trying. But it's really hard to buy a house and try to clean it up when you saw the pictures. So I think code enforcement did a great job on this and on the church in Garberville. So I think we can, and this hurts me because I like Luke. Luke actually helped build the house for me one time. So traded a motorcycle with him for some stuff. So, I mean, Luke's a good kid, and his dad was one of the best ever. But this is really bad, but we all have people that go through tough times. So do I make a motion to deny the appeal?
Well,
Sorry.
probably, I actually, You can do whatever. I just said Karen. I didn't know if she wanted to add something to or answer something for you, Rex. That's why I wanted to ask Karen, and then we can go to the motion.
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to address that, yes, he had quite a long time that he knew he was, having violations on the property. I mean, the do not enter and occupy was posted in December of 2020, and it was 8 months later that we actually performed the abatement. So there's at least that much time between what was the first official notice and the abatement. And then also, this particular property owner was not cooperative with us. He did not consent to let us on his property so that we could see actually what was going on. And we had to, go to the court and ask for an inspection warrant, which slows things down. And so we do try to work with people and try to have them come into compliance voluntarily, but sometimes they resist that. And so then we have to take further measures.
Okay, you okay, Supervisor Bohn, if we go to Supervisors Bushnell and then Wilson? And
That's great. We have another one down there we've been working on 15 years, so don't be surprised if you see that one too. So.
Thank you through the chair. My question is to Karen, I believe. So when you get ready to take action on these properties, can you inform me what the process is? Is it certified mail? Do you post it at the site?
Sure. Through the chair, we do, when we send notice out, our code dictates that we send it first class mail and we send it certified mail, both, and we send it to all the property owners separately. So sometimes we're sending out, if there's 2 property owners, we're sending out 4 separate pieces of mail to them. We also post it on the property in an obvious location. When we get ready to do an abatement, actually, have a contractor come in and start, we issue another notice called our intent to abate. So that's giving them kind of like, hey, we're really coming, we've told you that you're in violation, but this is getting real now. And, anywhere in that process, if someone were to say, hey, whoa, okay, you're serious, let's, I want a compliance agreement, or I want, I have a plan, we're always willing to listen to that. But that didn't happen in this case.
So thank you for that. If the certified mail is returned unreceived, what do you do then?
Sometimes our officers and investigators will attempt to contact them through family members or phone records. But really there's, if we post it on the property and we mailed it, we've given the due process and served proper notice legally. Although we do often try to reach them in other means, like I said, through if we have an email or a phone number or a family member that we can track down.
Thank you. So in this instance, that all was done?
I believe we spoke with a family member. Christine will probably be able to answer this better than I, since she was intimately involved. But I know we personally reached out to him at one point. He would come to his property line and talk to us, and we would explain, what was going on, and that, we wanted to inspect the property, or that, he had rights to appeal our notices and things like that. So maybe Christine, do you want to chime in on other measures you took?
Yes, I spoke with Luke actually many times in person on the property through the fence, like Karen mentioned. He actually did allow one consent inspection where he let me into the yard, but he would not let me into the structure. And so that's why I had to obtain the inspection warrant, was so that we could view the interior of the structure for the building code violations. And we would also communicate by text and occasionally by phone, but his phone service was somewhat erratic. But yes, we were in contact throughout this process. I additionally had to serve him in the correctional facility once because I knew that he would not be receiving the notices that I was sending to his PO box and posting on the property. I knew he was not going to see those. So I made a trip to the jail and served him in person there so that he would know what was going on with his property. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you for that.
Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair Bass. I just, yeah, these situations are never, good. And it speaks to a lot of issues we have to deal with. But I think the staff has done a really good job on this, considering all of these things. And I want to thank Supervisor Bohn too for really putting it out there in terms of trying to help the situation. As I've said before, I think that he puts a lot of effort into those situations, and I feel like any of these property owners that they have a lot of resources available to them here and there, but the energy of folks like Supervisor Bohn to not take advantage of that and get help to get this thing straightened up just tells me that we have gotten to a place where it's probably this is as good as it gets. And although I have to say, like, this may have been the only moat and drawbridge in Humboldt County, and I was like, hats off to that. I would love to see more moats and drawbridges, but or at least 15-year-old, 10-year-old me would like to see that. I'm ready to make a motion on this based on the staff recommendation. If it's okay by Supervisor Bohn, I'm just happy to read those off and get it going. And I'll make the motion to confirm the proposed nuisance abatement assessment on property located at 6608 3rd Street and Fields Landing, the amount of $49,318.74 in accordance with section 351-20 titled Cost Recovery Hearing of Title 3, Division 5, Chapter 2 of the Humboldt County Code, and adopt the resolution to confirm the proposed nuisance abatement assessment against Lucas Bodie pursuant to Humboldt County Code sections 351-1 et al. And that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, yeah, it was just, I know originally Supervisor Bohn was saying deny the appeal, but the language in here is different than that. So I think that's why Supervisor Wilson clarified that. Supervisor Madrone?
Yeah, these are always very difficult situations because we're dealing with human beings, right? Lives. But I have to say that in my experience, at least in my district, working with code enforcement folks, we're very lucky to have people like Christine and Karen and all the other team because they actually really care. I know they care. I know they take a lot of time to try and work with these landowners, to try and get corrections made, to move things forward. And we spend months, if not years, trying to help make that happen. And I just want to applaud Karen and Christine and all the other staff in code enforcement for their work. Nobody likes to do these abatements. Believe me, it's no fun whatsoever, but I appreciate the way they try to handle these and give landowners every opportunity to try and come into compliance. So thank you for your hard work.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. And I would say, like Supervisor Bohn, I also have known Luke in the past and who worked on my house and his dad as well. And so these aren't easy decisions at all because we know that there's real human, suffering happening in their lives, but at the same time, it's not like efforts weren't made and the counties spent resources, and it's just kind of like our financial, fiduciary duty to kind of give that cost back at least. So, and the fact that it could have been up to 149,000, that one would have been tough. So we have a motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, can we please have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell.
Yes.
And Supervisor Bohn.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, thank you all. I already closed that hearing. So now we're going to go to public comment on items that are not on the agenda. And Those of you who may be new to the meeting, just press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to speak, and you'll have 3 minutes. And we have a few folks, so I'll start with 5300, and I think that's Adam. Welcome back, Adam.
Hi, yeah, this is Adam Lustig calling in from District 4. I'll talk about this whole COVID-19 emergency thing that's ongoing. You know, it's clear, as I spoke earlier, that those of us that have been on Team Reality the past 2 years, it's now coming out that we were in fact correct about what was the proper approach to COVID-19. And I know I've sent you all quite a bit of emails and information. It's like way more than you ever had the time to look at. But I sent you something last night where Senator Ron Johnson did this panel discussion called COVID-19 Second Opinion. And, you know, the fact that the people in Team Reality that have been right, where I've gotten all my information, pretty much they all took part in this. And it's all the latest, up-to-date, correct information on COVID-19, not what the corporate media funded by Big Pharma has been pushing, which is what public health has been pushing now for 2 years, what is now shown to be incorrect and failed. You can actually see, you know, what does work, what will work, what the approach should be moving forward, all backed by data, all with, you know, well-accredited scientists and doctors. So, you know, it's just like we just threw $600,000 a contract tracing for basically what's a flu now, Omicron. You know, that would have bought a lot of ivermectin. You know, we can do better things with our money. We can take a better approach. We can save more lives. We could have saved a lot of lives if we hadn't just gone with the corporate media, Big Pharma, Democrat Party narrative that we've been following now for the past 2 years. But now that the CDC and mainstream media has started to come clean on a lot of these things, you can see that we've been right. And I just hope that you'll finally like open your eyes to what we've been saying, that we can get through this pandemic, we can save lives, we can cut down the hospitalizations, and we can stop all the division, all this divisiveness. You know, you got friends not talking to each other, family members not talking to each other, all over what? A vaccine that doesn't even stop transmission. It's silly. Or masks that don't do anything. Also silly. Like, we need to unify and heal. We need to get past this divisive narrative that we were fed by corporate interests. You know, the 10 richest people doubled their wealth in the past 2 years because of this whole COVID thing. So, I mean, we can see what their motivation obviously was. So I just hope that we can start to do better. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Excuse me. Sorry. 0151. So Dottie, I think that's you. Welcome.
Hi, Dottie Russell again. So as far as this code enforcement thing is concerned, I'm sure you're sick of hearing about it, and so am I actually. But the code enforcement, how do we get a team of people that address success instead of failure? So one person came out to a piece of property and said, well, there's a floodplain issue. And then somebody else came down and said, nobody's allowed to live in a travel trailer any place in Humboldt County except for a trailer park. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people living in travel trailers. Are you really expecting to give them all code enforcement possible abatements? And if not, then one would expect that you wouldn't give it to one if you're not going to give it to everybody. So, and then it was like, oh, just build it up 1 foot and it'll probably be fine. And then the next person said, well, you'll have to call for a surveyor. And so it's like, okay, I set up with this surveyor in 2 months because that was the first date that we could get. And then another person said, well, the cost of a surveyor is going to be so expensive, it's probably better if you just go on and move this tiny house thing. Do we want tiny houses or we don't? Do we want anybody living on the floodplain or do we want them all to move? And if so, apply for a grant for billions of dollars and relocate everybody. And that's fine if you have to do that. But it's so crazy. And then if somebody gets a complaint that there's a problem about something specific, and they go out there and there is not a problem about what's specific. But while they're there, then they find something else, and then they start, with what has to happen with the something else. But the county says that it's all based on complaint driven. Well, the complaint was about something that wasn't true, so then it turned out to be something else. And so there has to be a way that we can sort this all out. And then somebody said that a neighbor had done a flood elevation certificate with FEMA, but they couldn't tell me who it was. That was the next door neighbor. But then a county employee said that there's no flood elevation certificate with FEMA that's current with Humboldt County. I don't know how you expect anybody to figure out what to do if nobody knows what can be on a floodplain and what the flood elevation is. Is there anybody that can take that up into consideration and figure this out, because it affects thousands of people? I mean, if it was just me, it was like, okay, hang Dottie, who cares? But it's not. It's all the people living on the floodplain. So
All right,
please.
thank you, Dottie, for calling in. Sorry, 3 minutes goes fast. Our next speaker is 0116. I believe that's Ash.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, this is Ash Teeter again. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of reflect some of Adam's previous comments. I have noticed just like kind of a good energy in this year moving forward, where the people calling in, kind of learn the ropes a little bit more and just, how to conduct themselves effectively. And with that has came, the board, listening a little more to what we have to say. I just want to say I appreciate that. And I've definitely noticed that today, and actually getting questions that were asked answered. That's a really great thing. So, another thing that I wanted to say is that I don't know if you're familiar with the lawsuit that Thomas Renz is filing. I think it's against the CDC and stuff, just over vaccine deaths and whatnot. And one of the figures that he was noticing that some physicians or someone brought forward to him is that compared to the 5-year average, since the vaccines have rolled out nationally, neurological medical cases have went up 10 times, 1,000%. Miscarriages have went up 300%. That's 3 times the 5-year average. And cancer cases have went up also the same, 300%, 3 times the 5-year average. So I was just wondering if that is something that we could look at locally. And I think it's a good question to ask. If other people are finding that on a national level, are we seeing the same thing locally? And that's my only question. I'd hope that be something the board might be willing to look into. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ash. And our next speaker is 3849, and if that's you, press *6 to unmute. 3849. Just press *6. Welcome.
Okay, this is,
you have 3
hi,
minutes.
thank you. My name is Polly Kinsinger, and I am a licensed cultivator. Please excuse me as I read my comments in order to keep my time to a minimum. When the county extended the deadline for paying the second installment of the cultivation tax last fall, I was so relieved. I hadn't been able to sell 3/4 of my production from 2020, so I was using everything I had saved to pay my operational costs for the 2021 cultivation season. I figured that by the time the delayed bill came due in May, I would have sales from my new harvest to cover it, as well as the first installment of the fees due for 2022. But that hope has not come to fruition. I've not been able to sell 1 pound yet from this past cultivation season. I thought 10 units were going out a week ago at $4.50 per pound, which is right at my operational costs. But the sale fell through because the buyer's potency test came in at 26.5% instead of the 28% my R&D test showed. I hear all these rave reviews about nose and flower size and density and color, and the quality is great, but it's just not selling, not even with an open negotiated amount per pound. The sale of trim that was in quarantine from 2020 has kept my lights on, but it's selling at 12 to 15 per pound, depending on potency. I am now taking an equity loan out on my home in order to pay my end of season costs from the fall. Please hear our collective voices. We cannot afford to pay the Measure S cultivation tax. No other agricultural product in our county has such a tax, and it is entirely in your hands as our elected officials to help us pass this insurmountable hurdle. In closing, I'd like to thank Supervisors Bohn, Bushnell, Wilson, and Madrone for attending last week's rally, and I'm looking forward to next Tuesday's public hearing on this topic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we will go to 3053. And so that's Thomas, and then you know the.
Good afternoon, Thomas Mulder here. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, Thomas.
All right, so yes, I'd like to share a lot of the sentiments shared by the previous speaker about the Measure S taxes. So many similar stories, horror stories of middlemen and all kinds of bad things happening and farmers not getting paid. So the 5 of you do have it in your purview to suspend that payment that's due, that was originally due in October. I think you should suspend at least both payments that are coming up in May, and probably reconsider the following one. I know that might bust your budget for the 21-22 fiscal year budget, but do you want to support and help promote and save an industry that invested billions of dollars within this county, whether everyone wants to, admit it or not? But it's a short-term problem. I think that reality is going to come forward and there's going to be some solutions made. But I think anything that the 5 of you can do to help promote and save the legacy operators, you should do. It's a tough world out there. I think there's some other changes that could come forward that would be at your purview to help make it a more thriving and sustainable industry and help save and keep as much of that economic revenue within our county via jobs and investments and all kinds of other things. And lastly, I'd like to just speak, just because a project may come before you that might have a consensus vote that's coming for appeal from the Planning Commission. Depending on the way whose first vote goes, someone that may not be in favor of added conditions of projects may vote in favor of the project at the time because they're fearful that the project itself may not get approved. So that's why you might see a higher vote count or a consensus or all in favor of. So individually, you can reach out to me if you're allowed to or whatever and ask me my stance on things. But there's a rule. There's 2 ordinances in place, Ordinance 1.0 and Ordinance 2.0. And I think it's very clear that Ordinance 1.0 was left alone except for the unintended consequences of the sphere of influence area. And those rules should be followed. And sometimes they're not followed. And it's the board's job to set policy, not a planning commission's job to set policy. So have a great afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Thomas. And this is the last hand at the moment. 1041, and I think it's Donnie. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you again for this moment to speak. And I would also like to second Adam and Ash's comments about how it's been a really nice turn of events today and this new year, commenting and working with the Board of Supervisors in this capacity. I wanted to talk about some non-agenda items, specifically on humboldtgov.org/2749/dashboard. If you go there and you scroll down under weekly case rates, fully vaccinated versus unvaccinated, it's a cute chart with a red line and a blue line. The red line represents the unvaccinated and the blue line represents the vaccinated. And on August 7th, there's a little key marker that says mask mandate. From that point forward, you see that what looks to be a drop in cases, which looks to kind of signal some kind of success for maybe the mandate, maybe that, the correlation, even though obviously it's not causation, the correlation was, kind of pointed out like, look, we made a mask mandate and we had a decline in cases. Fantastic. But the problem is the mask mandate is still in effect. And now we're fast forwarding into December. And it looks like from mid-December forward, we've had a shotgun of both cases in vaccinated and unvaccinated. We have 131 peaking per 100,000 and 148 per 100,000 per the unvaccinated and the vaccinated. So, I mean, it's like, if anything spells out that the mandates aren't working and the course that the Department of Health has been taking isn't working, that's a pretty good indicator. I mean, because the masks, they're in place and they're not working at all. And I mean, yeah, we can use the excuse that the virus changed and okay, well, that's great, but the mandates aren't changing and they're not working. I mean, currently we have on another page that you can look off of that is when you click on the dashboard, you have 85,881 people that are fully vaccinated, whatever that's defined as these days. And if that's the case, that we have 63.18% of our population fully vaccinated, and the fully vaccinated tend to be more on the people who, are elderly and have pre-existing conditions, upwards of 87% of the 75 plus age, 94% of the 65 to 74 age, 70% of the 50 to 64 age. I mean, all of the people that kind of get the brunt of this thing are protected with air quotes, as well as however that is. And if they're wearing masks and they've gotten the vaccine, I just don't understand why we'd keep going on with, policies that clearly are failures based upon your own collected data. And then, obviously vote for, more funding for the very faculty members and people that are putting forth this data and collecting it to just keep going on doing it. And just fine.
Adam, I messed up the timer, so you got a little extra time already. I couldn't get it to beep, and I apologize. So you did get beyond 3 minutes. I do apologize for it not going off, though. Technically challenged sometimes. Okay, with that, we will return to the board. And before we go into closed session, or actually, well, first I'll ask for the county council to tell us about closed session, and then we have someone we're adjourning in memory of, and I want to make sure we have that heard before we go into closed session. County Council Billingsley.
Thank you, Chair. It's the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to review the county's position and instruct its designated labor negotiators, Alicia Hayes and Jack Hughes, for the various employee organizations listed in agenda item M1.
All right, thank you. As far as attendees with comments, if you wanted to comment on this item, press 9. I don't see any, so go back to the board. And prior to going to closed session, said we are adjourning in memory of one of our community members who was very active, who recently passed away, Aaron Rowe. And I believe Supervisor Madrone has some words he may like to say.
Yes, I would. Thank you very much, Chair. Aaron Rowe has just been a stalwart on our Human Rights Commission. She's been on there for a number of years, and I know she's going to be sorely missed by the rest of the commission. She's the vice chair, was the vice chair. I'm going to read a very brief obituary that was posted in the paper. Trinidad resident and California native Aaron Rowe died of natural causes on December 26, 2021. Aaron had a lifetime of environmentalism and altruism through family law practice, mediation, and human rights activism. She loved animals, gardening, and painting abstract portraits. Most of all, she will be remembered as a beloved mother, aunt, sister, and friend to all who know her. She is survived by her two sons, Jesse and Slater, and I had the pleasure of working with her on some of the trails in Trinidad, one of which runs right below her backyard on the bluffs there at Van Wyck. So we're all gonna miss Erin, and very grateful that we could close our meeting today in her honor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Madrone, well said. So with that, we will go into closed session and we will come out and officially adjourn in the memory of Erin Rowe. All right. For some reason, I had to go sideways route to get in the meeting, but glad to be here. All right, so I'd like to now ask County Council Billingsley if there's anything to report out of closed session.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On item M1, there is no reportable action.
All right, thank you very much. So today we are adjourning in the memory of Erin Rowe. And thank you, Supervisor Madrone, for bringing that forward. And with that, we're